Chapter 1036. In such a snowfield, a young master like Gu Ziyan, who had not experienced any great storms, was just a burden. He could not accomplish anything, but he was good at spoiling things. It made people speechless. Kirin seemed to still be in the process of escaping, so after it said a few more words, it hurriedly ended the call with Ning Xuemo. In fact, Kirin was indeed still running for its life. It was like a bolt of blue lightning flying across the vast white snowfield. The sled behind them was almost flying. It had barely touched the ground, and the wind mixed with the snow made their cheeks hurt. A huge monster that looked like a dinosaur and was covered in white scales was chasing after them. The monster's speed was so fast that it was almost on par with the little Qilin. When Gu Ziyan turned around, he saw the monster staring at him with its lantern-sized eyes. It was glowing with an ominous glint. Its huge mouth opened and roared from time to time. Gu Ziyan could almost see its huge sharp teeth with a few strands of flesh hanging from them. He was so scared that his legs were trembling. His face was pale, and his hands were trembling so much that he almost lost his grip on the sled. The monster opened its mouth and a strong fishy wind blew toward them. Ah! Yan Ziyuan cried out in alarm. She lost her grip on the sled and her hands loosened. Her whole body flew out like a kite with a broken string. Behind her, the white monster was waiting with its huge mouth open. Gu Ziyan shouted, "Ziyuan!" But he only held on tightly to the sled and turned his head away. He could not bear to see Yan Ziyuan being torn apart. Yifeng also flew out the moment Yan Ziyuan was thrown out. He raised his speed to the maximum and finally caught Yan Ziyuan before she fell into the monster's mouth. But he was too fast and he could not stop in time. He could only watch as he flew into the monster's mouth. When the monster saw that there was one more person, it was naturally very happy. It quickly opened its mouth wider, waiting for a big meal to be delivered. Yan Ziyuan could almost see the monster's house-sized mouth. A huge blood-red tongue with flesh spikes curled up, and stinky saliva dripped down the monster's mouth drop by drop. She was so scared that her face turned pale and her heart felt like it was going to jump out of her chest. Her vision suddenly turned black as a large hand covered her eyes. Yifeng's slightly cold voice sounded in her ears, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." These simple words gave Yan Ziyuan great comfort. It was as if a warm current was washing over her heart, making her have an inexplicable urge to cry. She was tightly held in Yifeng's arms, but his strength was so gentle that it was as if he was protecting a precious and fragile porcelain. She did not feel any pain at all. Yan Ziyuan was pressed against his chest. Her eyes were covered by his hand. Hearing his fast and powerful heartbeat, she suddenly felt at ease. It was as if even if there was a mountain of knives and a sea of fire in front of them, as long as she was with him, they could go through it together. Yifeng calmly looked at the enlarged mouth in front of him. At the moment when he was about to fly in, he kicked the monster's sharp teeth. The strength of his kick was so great that it broke the monster's teeth. Using this reaction force, his body shot up, and after a few quick jumps on the snowy ground, he flew towards the sled. All of this happened in a flash. The monster thought that a big meal was about to be in its mouth, but it did not expect that the fat meat in its mouth would fly away and one of its front teeth would be broken. It was furious and roared again and again. Chapter 1037. The roar was so loud that Gu Ziyan almost fainted. His face was drained of color as he gripped the sled tightly. He urged Kirin, who had deliberately slowed down to wait for Yifeng, to speed up. If it wasn't for the fact that Gu Ziyan's blood was the antidote to the curse, Kirin would have thrown Gu Ziyan out to feed the monster. How could there be such a scum in this world? Yifeng finally rushed back with Yan Ziyuan in his arms. Because of this delay, the white monster was very close to them. Kirin waited for Yifeng to regain his footing before picking up speed. Finally, they managed to put some distance between them and the monster. The wind on the icy plains was strong to begin with, and with Kirin's lightning-fast speed, the wind was so strong that it could almost flip a person over. The real wind was like a knife cutting through the air. At this time it was snowing. The usually soft and light snowflakes were like small cannonballs under the relatively high speed, smashing down on Yifeng and the others. Yifeng gripped the sled tightly with one hand and raised his sleeve to protect Yan Ziyuan. At the same time, he used Sharkman's power of origin to keep her warm. Yan Ziyuan had an indescribable feeling in her heart. She wanted to push him away, but she also wanted to hug him tightly. This feeling was sweet and sour at the same time. It made her slightly absent-minded. The person in front of her who was hugging her was very warm. At the same time, he was also protecting her tightly, as if he was afraid that she would be hurt. On the other hand, Gu Ziyan was very unlucky. The wind blew so hard that he couldn't open his eyes. His fingers were frozen, and his hair was blown wildly by the wind. He had lost his gentle and elegant image of a noble young master. Now he was clutching the sled tightly like a madman. He screamed in horror, "Slow down! Slow down! I'm going to be thrown off! Ziyuan, tell Kirin to slow down! Slow down!" Kirin was furious. It said fiercely, "Shut up! If you dare to say another word, I'll chop you up and feed you to the dogs." Gu Ziyan immediately kept quiet out of fear, not daring to say another word. He could only continue to hold onto the sled tightly. Like a frightened quail, he curled himself up into a ball and looked at the monster that was getting closer and closer to him with fear and trepidation. He no longer cared that Yi Feng was holding Yan Ziyuan. Kacha kacha. The sled beneath him suddenly made a strange noise. Yi Feng's expression changed slightly as he frowned. This was bad. The sled was about to fall apart. Coincidentally, one of the logs under Gu Ziyan broke. His body tilted and he was almost thrown off. In his panic he couldn't help but shout, the sled is breaking." Naturally, Yan Ziyuan also knew that the sleigh was about to break. Her face turned pale and she couldn't help but tighten her grip on Yi Feng's hand. Yi Feng hugged her tightly with one arm and comforted her softly, "Don't be afraid." Yi Feng's voice seemed to have a strange soothing effect. It made her panicked mind slowly calm down. The little Qilin tried to slow down in order to slow down the speed of the snow sleigh's destruction, but the white beast was relentless in its pursuit. As soon as it slowed down, the white beast fiercely opened its mouth and fiercely closed it again. The sound of its white teeth biting down was extremely loud. Gu Ziyan was so scared that his soul almost flew away. He kept urging, "Faster, faster. I know you can't go too fast. It'll fall apart. What should we do? Yi Feng, don't you have any ideas? It's a pity that I've lost all my power. Otherwise I would definitely be able to stop it." The wind was too strong and his voice was broken in the air. Chapter 1038. Yan Ziyuan was barely able to hear what he said. However, she was also concerned about him. Hearing the change in pitch of his voice, she could not help but ask Yi Feng, "Yi Feng, what did he say?" Yi Feng looked back at the monster that was about to catch up to them. Then he looked at Yan Ziyuan, who was in his arms. Steeling himself, he pulled her hand and placed it on the sled. "You can do it. Hold on tight." Yan Ziyuan subconsciously tightened her grip on the wooden handle. Suddenly she felt a chill run down her back. Yi Feng's body was sent flying backward. His cold voice could still be heard clearly in the wind. "Kirin, you take the two of them and leave first. I will bring up the rear. Bring up your sister's bloodline." He was simply no match for the monster. Bringing up the rear would only make him a snack for the monster. Was he planning to use his own flesh and blood to help the two of them? That stupid fish. Kirin opened its mouth and turned around to grab Yi Feng's robes. Then it tossed him onto its back. The wind was too strong and Kirin could only shout, "Master said we must go through thick and thin together. If we are going to leave, we will leave together." After that, it used the same method to toss Yan Ziyuan onto its back. Just as it was about to reluctantly hold Gu Ziyan in its mouth, Gu Ziyan saw the huge mouth right before his eyes. Fear welled up in his heart and he could not stop himself from taking a step back. He avoided Kirin's mouth. "Kirin? Holy shit." At the same time, the fragile sled was no longer able to withstand Kirin's lightning-fast speed. With a crash, it broke into pieces. Gu Ziyan rolled and was thrown out. The inertia was too great and he rolled like an unstoppable ball. When he finally managed to stop rolling and opened his eyes, he was so frightened that he nearly fell to the ground. Behind him, the white monster was less than 10 steps away from him. Seeing that he was alone, the white monster's eyes filled with excitement and ferocity. It opened its mouth and charged toward him. "Help. I was left behind. Kirin. I was left behind. Ziyuan." Gu Ziyan let out a shrill cry. His voice had completely changed. It was almost inhuman. Kirin cursed under his breath and had no choice but to turn around and run back. Gu Ziyan was about the same distance away from the two beasts. When Kirin arrived, the white behemoth had also arrived. Its big mouth was facing Gu Ziyan, and its saliva was almost dripping onto his head. Gu Ziyan seemed to have fainted from the shock and was paralyzed on the spot. The white behemoth was stunned when it saw the little Qilin that had run away come back like a bolt of lightning. While it was in a daze, the little Qilin had already gathered all its strength. Its big head fiercely slammed into the relatively soft part of the behemoth's body, causing the behemoth that was twice its size to stumble back a few steps. Kirin's head was also dizzy from the impact. It shook its big head and took the opportunity to pick up the unconscious Gu Ziyan with its mouth and threw him on its back. At the same time it muttered, "Why is there a foul smell?" Then it sped up and ran a few steps. A pair of fleshy wings spread out on its body, and it flew up like a small glider. It was actually very sad. If it was not so urgent, Kirin would not let anyone else ride on its back except for its master and the Divine Lord. Now that the situation was urgent, it had no choice but to carry them on its back and fly for a while. The white behemoth obviously could not fly, but it was unwilling to give up and chased after them for a long distance. When it saw that it could not catch up, it resentfully stopped. Chapter 1039. The monster roared a few times at the sky where Kirin had disappeared. Its long and sorrowful cries resounded through the sky. Kirin carried Yi Feng and the others into the air. Gu Ziyan finally woke up. When he woke up and saw himself flying in the air, he was so scared that he trembled. When he was unconscious, Yi Feng had been holding him tightly. Otherwise he wouldn't have been able to sit on Kirin's back. When Yi Feng saw that he had woken up, he also let out a sigh of relief and said lightly, "Hold on tight." In order for them to have something to hold on to, the little Qilin deliberately changed the Qilin armor on its back into a few handles. Yi Feng moved aside and let Gu Ziyan hold on to one of the handles. Gu Ziyan also knew that this was a moment of life and death, so he quickly held on tightly. He had been frightened too much today and his mind was on the verge of collapse. When Gu Ziyan's frightened soul returned to its original position, he suddenly felt that a certain part of his lower body was a little cold and painful. He was shocked. Could it be that the monster ate his family jewels? He quickly touched his lower body and made sure that it was still there. Only then did he let out a long sigh of relief. Yi Feng coldly watched him touch himself. He buried Yan Ziyuan's face in his arms, not letting her see this unsightly scene. Gu Ziyan's touch was completely subconscious. When he realized how embarrassing it was to do it, he had already finished touching himself. Even if Gu Ziyan's skin was as thick as a city wall, his handsome face couldn't help but turn red at this moment. He was embarrassed in front of his love rival. Not only did he touch himself, he was also so scared that he wet his pants. If those two people knew about this, then he, Gu Ziyan, would really find a hole to hide in. However, Kirin's back was wide enough and he was sitting behind Yi Feng and the others. They shouldn't be able to smell it, right? Gu Ziyan could only clamp his legs together and pretend that nothing had happened. He adjusted his wolf fur robe to make himself look more natural. He wanted to change the topic to end this awkward situation. He cleared his throat and said, "Ziyan, before he could finish his sentence, Kirin interrupted, "Gu Ziyan, why is your butt so wet? Damn it, did you pee your pants just now?" Gu Ziyan was speechless. His face turned even redder as he tried to defend himself. "No, of course not. It's snow water. Just now there must have been snow stuck to my body so... Fuck. Who are you trying to fool? Snow water smelled like urine? Don't try to fool me." Kirin bluntly exposed him. Gu Ziyan. He couldn't find the words to refute her. On the other side, Kirin bluntly scolded him, "A grown man like you actually peed your pants? Don't you feel ashamed? Don't you dare pee on me again. If you dare to pee on me, I will immediately throw you down and trample you to death." Gu Ziyan. His face had already turned the color of pig liver. Yan Ziyuan couldn't help but turn around and look at Gu Ziyan with a complicated expression. "Ziyan?" Kirin was still complaining, but Gu Ziyan couldn't hear her at all. His mind was filled with the words, "embarrassing." Not only did his beloved find out about this embarrassing incident, but his love rival also saw it as a joke. He originally wanted to call Yan Ziyuan over so that she wouldn't be with Yi Feng. Now that Kirin had exposed the fact that he had peed his pants, he wanted to find a hole to hide in. He was too ashamed to call Yan Ziyuan over. Chapter 1040. Yi Feng did not look back at all. It had nothing to do with him whether that person peed in his pants or not. The wind was biting cold. No matter who it was, opening their mouth would result in a stomach full of wind. The little Qilin was flying too fast, so Yan Ziyuan didn't dare to move carelessly on its back. She wanted to ask about Gu Ziyan's situation, but after being hit by the wind several times, she finally gave up. Kirin did not fly for a long time in the air. Yan Ziyuan and Gu Ziyan's psychokinesis was either weak or non-existent, so they could not withstand the strong wind in the air. The two of them could not withstand a long flight, so Kirin flew for less than half an hour before Gu Ziyan painfully shouted for it to stop. Kirin laughed at him for a while, then slowly descended when it saw that the white monster was no longer there. During this time, Yan Ziyuan had been very quiet, staying beside Yi Feng. No one knew what she was thinking. Yi Feng had been protecting her, slowing down the wind for her. He lowered his eyes and looked at Yan Ziyuan, who was sitting quietly beside him with her head lowered. Suddenly he felt a little warm in his heart. She was now willing to sit beside him and let him shelter her from the wind and rain. This was like a dream. The pain in his heart for the past few days was like the ice and snow of early spring, slowly melting away. His empty and frozen heart was filled at this moment. It was warmed and gradually became alive. Again and again it beat vigorously. Although the conditions were bad and they were still running for their lives, Yi Feng felt satisfied. He hoped that time would stop at this moment, and she would be by his side safely, relying on him wholeheartedly. Under his wings she would be happy and worry-free for the rest of her life. If this is a dream, please let me wake up later. The little Qilin slowly landed in an open space. It shook the scales on its body and felt that it was scum after flying with Gu Ziyan on this journey. If it weren't for the fact that they couldn't leave it, it would have dived into the sea to wash itself. It was a Kirin that loved cleanliness. After Yi Feng landed safely with Yan Ziyuan in his arms, he subconsciously hugged her to protect her. Gu Ziyan rolled and crawled down from the little Qilin's back. He staggered and stood firm on the ground. After seeing Yi Feng's action towards Yan Ziyuan, the fire in his heart flared up. In a flash, he felt as if his hat had been cuckolded by a lot. He resisted the urge to get angry and squeezed out a gentle and handsome smile. Ziyuan, come here. Why do you always stay with other men? Yan Ziyuan was stunned and hesitated for a moment. She looked at him and then looked at Yi Feng. Her clear eyes flashed with some confusion, and her feet moved slightly towards him. Gu Ziyan's heart skipped a beat. He had a feeling that Yan Ziyuan was going to be out of his control again. He immediately cast a spell secretly and strengthened the control of the double life spell. He looked at Yan Ziyuan with tenderness that almost turned into tears. Ziyuan, come here. Let me see if you're hurt. Come to my side. Yan Ziyuan's eyes flashed with pain and confusion. In the end she finally fell in love with Gu Ziyan. She broke free from Yi Feng's hand and walked towards Gu Ziyan. She said with concern, Ziyan, how are you? But she couldn't help but look at Yi Feng. Gu Ziyan took the opportunity to hold Yan Ziyuan's hand and looked at her affectionately. Ziyan, as long as you're okay, I'm alive for you. At the same time he strengthened the power of the double life spell again. Chapter 1041. Yan Ziyuan's gaze finally lingered on him and no longer looked at anyone else. Yi Feng lowered his eyes and looked at his hand. Her body heat still lingered on it, but she had already turned her back to him and walked step by step towards another man. He could only stand there stiffly. There was no reason for him to persuade her to stay. She didn't look back either. She walked to Gu Ziyan's side and was pulled into his arms. She snuggled up to him and asked about his well-being. From the beginning to the end she didn't turn back to look at Yi Feng. Yi Feng's numb heart seemed to ache again. He closed his eyes slightly and calmed the undercurrent in his heart. He woke up from his dream so soon. Perhaps their fate had to end here. After all, now was not the time to sort out his chaotic emotions. Yi Feng calmed down in a moment. He temporarily put his heartache aside and used the method Ning Xuema taught him to find the ice flame flower. He began to slowly search for traces to determine which direction they should go. Previously they were chased like pigs and wolves and now they didn't even know where they were. Yi Feng was naturally the soul of this team. Only after he determined which direction to go, could Kirin escort them. This was a forest of ice towers. Small icebergs of various sizes rose from the ground and shone faintly under the starlight. The light blue and dark blue icebergs were strangely shaped. The starlight reflected on them and they were exceptionally beautiful. Yi Feng was in a trance for a moment. He had once brought Yi Yu to a crystal island. There were crystal towers on the island, and they were similar to the ice towers here. At that time, Yi Yu was so happy when she saw this beautiful scene that she laughed and jumped beside him. She even hugged his neck and spun around a few times. She even sang a song and danced for him. At that time she hugged his arm and said that she liked it there. She wanted to build a palace there and make it her home. Because that island was quite far from where Sharkmen lived, it took a day's journey to and fro, and Yi Feng had to deal with the affairs of the clan. It was impossible for him to build his home there. Therefore Yi Feng didn't take her words seriously and just laughed it off. After that he didn't go there for a long time. When he went there again he found the man that Yi Yu secretly hid on that island. After Yi Yu's death, Yi Feng imprisoned himself on that small island to help her recover her soul. He spent a few hundred years on that small island. He built the Sharkmen Palace on that island according to the layout she liked when she was alive, fulfilling her wish. Unfortunately she never saw it again. Now, looking at the place that was almost similar to the scenery of the small island, and then looking at the two people in front of him who were talking in a low voice, Yi Feng felt as if his heart was being pricked by needles. He suddenly strode forward and silently began to chisel the ice to build the house. After this round of running, Gu Xian's legs were weak and his bones felt like they were about to fall apart. He glanced at the busy Yi Feng and didn't say anything. After thinking for a while, he pulled Yan Ziyuan's hand and said, "Ziyun, let's check the surroundings. If there's no danger, we'll rest here." Yan Ziyuan also felt like her body was about to fall apart. She actually wanted to rest more. She couldn't help but look at Yi Feng. Yi Feng was only focused on chiseling the ice and didn't raise his head to look at them. For some reason, Yan Ziyuan was a little afraid of being alone with Gu Xian. However, the twin life curse made her unable to go against Gu Xian's wishes. Chapter 1042. Therefore she paused for a moment and said, "Let's not run around. There might be monsters or something like that. Let's not separate for the time being." Gu Xian's expression did not look too good. When Yan Ziyuan said this, she could not help but look at Yi Feng a few times. It was obvious that she had unknowingly taken Yi Feng as her pillar of support. She was his future wife. He should be her sky and she should rely on him. But now she could not help but look at Yi Feng. This was with the effect of the twin life curse on her. Without the twin life curse, she would not even be bothered to look at him at this time. She clearly loved him so much. She was obviously so obsessed with him, but he did not know when her attention had been diverted. Her thoughts were all on her secret guard. After he escaped with Rong Yen that day, he fled back to Daliang City in a panic. He thought that Yan Ziyuan had died and was very sad. He was depressed at home for 2 days. Lord Yen heard the news that he had returned to the city from somewhere and personally came to ask about his daughter's whereabouts. Gu Xian naturally could not say that he had given up on Yan Ziyuan at the most critical moment, so he vaguely glossed over it. He only said that they had met a strange person and that the strange person had taken the boat to the chaotic river. In the end, he had led everyone out of danger with a plan. Unexpectedly, they encountered a storm and the boat capsized. Only he and Rong Yen escaped. He had looked for Yan Ziyuan nearby for a long time, but there was no trace of her. His story was 70% true and 30% false. Lord Yen believed him without a doubt. He also thought that his daughter had died and was very sad. He blurted out, "It must be that Yi Feng who is playing tricks." Under Gu Xian's questioning, Lord Yen told him what had happened 3 years ago. Yi Feng's arrival was the same as what Yan Ziyuan had told Ning Xuema. He had captured Lord Yen and wanted to be Yan Ziyuan's bodyguard. Lord Yen had been on tenterhooks for the past few years, afraid that Yi Feng would harm his daughter's life. Later, when he saw that he had been protecting Yan Ziyuan, he was slightly relieved. However, he always felt that this unknown man with amazing martial arts was harboring evil intentions. He had always been on his guard. Now that he heard that his daughter had died, he immediately thought of this matter. He thought that Yi Feng was behind the scenes and hated Yi Feng to the bone. Because he did not see his daughter's bones, Lord Yen was not willing to give up. He sent many troops to the chaotic river to search for his daughter's whereabouts. Who knew that not long after he sent out the troops, Yan Ziyuan would actually come back? Lord Yen was naturally overjoyed. However, he did not expect that Yan Ziyuan would ask her father to help her save Yi Feng the moment she came back. Gu Xian still remembered Yan Ziyuan's condition at that time. Her hair was disheveled and she had lost a lot of weight. Her clothes were also dirty because of the long journey. At that time, Lord Yen was at Gu Xian's place. Yan Ziyuan directly barged in and knelt in front of Lord Yen. She said that Yi Feng was Sharkman. He had saved her life in the chaotic river but was taken away by Yi Qinghuan. She did not know if he was dead or alive. She begged Lord Yen to find someone to save Yi Feng no matter what. At that time, Gu Xian was sitting next to her and even called out to her a few times. However, Yan Ziyuan ignored him. Lord Yen hated Yi Feng to the bone. Even if he knew that Yi Feng had saved his daughter, his view did not change much. It was impossible for him to save Yi Feng. Moreover, he did not have any connections to save someone from Yi Qinghuan. Chapter 1043. In fact, even if he had this ability, he didn't want to use it. He wanted Yi Feng to die at Yi Qinghuan's place and never come back. City Lord Yen pretended to agree to his daughter's request, but he didn't do anything. Yan Ziyuan asked her father about the rescue almost every day, which made City Lord Yen very annoyed. He felt that his daughter was bewitched. As long as he found a good husband for her to marry, she wouldn't think about that Sharkman anymore. Coincidentally, at this time, Gu Xian finally recognized his own feelings and came to the Yen residence to ask for a marriage. City Lord Yen knew that his daughter used to like Gu Xian. Originally, he thought that Gu Ziyan didn't have any family background, so if his daughter married him like this, it would be a waste. But at this time he wanted to divert his daughter's attention, so he happily agreed. He didn't expect that when Yan Ziyuan heard this news, her reaction would be fierce. She didn't agree at all. Some people were the kind of people who wanted more the more they couldn't get it, and Gu Ziyan was the representative of this kind of people. When Yan Ziyuan liked him, he felt annoyed and wanted to kick her away. But when Yan Ziyuan really gave up on him and fell in love with someone else, he felt uncomfortable. He also felt that Yan Ziyuan was good, so he didn't want to let her go. Yan Ziyuan's rejection of the marriage made him lose face, but his desire to get her was even stronger. Just at this time, that black-clothed masked man came to find him. At that time, Gu Ziyan was at his wit's end. Naturally, he hit it off with that black-clothed man. This was the reason why Yan Ziyuan fell under the twin life curse and fell head over heels in love with him. She was willing to accept his proposal and wholeheartedly become his bride. Gu Ziyan thought that he would finally succeed, but he didn't think that something like this would happen on the day of the wedding. When he was poisoned, he had actually suspected that Yihan Shanyue had poisoned him when he was drinking, but he felt that it wasn't very likely. Because in his impression, Master Han was a proud and arrogant person. He wouldn't use such petty tricks. Moreover, on the day of the wedding when he had just woken up from his coma, Ning Xuema had said that the antidote was the ice flame flower. This Master Han didn't want to meddle in other people's business and didn't want to come. For the sake of his own life, he had begged and begged again and again before he was able to invite this great master to follow him. Gu Ziyan didn't know the special solution to the twin life curse. Naturally, he didn't know that Ning Xuema and the others came to the ice field to find the flower for Yan Ziyuan. Therefore, he couldn't figure out why Master Han would trick him to come here and risk his life. No matter how he thought about it, he still felt that Master Han was doing this for Ning Xuema's sake so that Yan Ziyuan wouldn't be a widow. Along the way, Ning Xuema was cold enough to him. Yifeng was originally cold to him. As for that Master Han, he had always been proud and aloof. He simply ignored him. He also knew that these people didn't fall out with him because of his relationship with Yan Ziyuan. Therefore he endured it and tried his best not to provoke them. He didn't want to find trouble for himself. But in his heart he had made up his mind. Once his body recovered, he would urge Yan Ziyuan to completely cut off all ties with these people and never come in contact with them again. This way he could live the life he wanted with Yan Ziyuan. With two beauties by his side, from time to time he would participate in a scholarly gathering, play the zither, do some painting and discuss life. That would be a romantic and comfortable life. Of course, to be Gu Ziyan's woman in the future, 3 obedience and 4 virtues were a must. After he went back he would slowly let Yan Ziyuan learn these things. Chapter 1044. In the future, Yan Ziyuan would be able to take care of the affairs of the mansion for him. She would be a good wife, take care of her husband and teach her children. She would wash his hands and make soup for him. When she was tired, she would massage his shoulders and legs. She would be a real good woman. This was Gu Ziyan's entire plan. He thought that after Yan Ziyuan was cursed with the twin life curse, as long as she married him, even if the twin life curse was broken in half a year, she would still be loyal to him and would not have any other thoughts. However, he did not expect that in these few days of getting along, Yan Ziyuan's eyes would become more and more attracted to Yifeng. In her deepest subconscious, it seemed that she still relied on Yifeng. It was just that she did not know it yet. If this went on, if she got along with Yifeng for a few more days, it was hard to guarantee that Yan Ziyuan would not be attracted to Yifeng again and break off the engagement. He knew Yan Ziyuan's temperament very well. Once she got serious, she would not care about anything. This made Gu Ziyan have a very serious sense of crisis. Once his safety was guaranteed, he would consider ways to get Yan Ziyuan once and for all. Just now, he really wanted to take Yan Ziyuan to a place where no one could see and use his outstanding flirting skills to get Yan Ziyuan so that she would not have any other thoughts. However, he did not expect that Yan Ziyuan would actually refuse. He looked at Yifeng. After a few days of practice, Yifeng was quite good at building ice houses. In just an hour he had already built half of it. It seemed that there would be no problem for 3 people to sleep in it. This damn shark men. Since Gu Ziyan almost raped Yan Ziyuan, he had been sleeping with them. He was always with them, so he did not even have time to be alone with Yan Ziyuan. At this time his feelings towards Yifeng were very complicated. He could not bear to leave him, but he also hated him. With Kirin glaring at them from the side, Gu Ziyan could not force Yan Ziyuan to leave. So, he smiled and said, "We're just going to walk around here for a while to stretch our muscles. We won't be too far from here." To this point, Yan Ziyuan did not raise any objections. Sure enough, she obediently allowed him to hold her hand and stroll around the ice tower. Kirin had been instructed by its master to follow Yan Ziyuan and Gu Ziyan as long as they were alone. Gu Ziyan originally wanted to take Yan Ziyuan to a remote place to do his deed, but when he turned around he saw Kirin's sharp eyes. Under the gaze of such a pair of eyes, he didn't dare to have any dirty thoughts. Later on, he held hands with Yan Ziyuan and enjoyed the beautiful scenery nearby. He was very talented. Not only did he know how to play the piano, but he also knew how to recite poems. In addition, the unique scenery here made him very interested in poetry. He casually recited a poem and won Yan Ziyuan's praise. Occasionally he would even make her laugh non-stop. "Ziyuan, I heard that you can sing very well. Why don't you sing for me?" Gu Ziyan was in the mood again. "Sure." Yan Ziyuan was also very straightforward. She was very proud. "I can not only sing but also dance. Do you want to see?" "Yes." Yan Ziyuan was naturally very happy to be able to show off her talents in front of her sweetheart. She lowered her head and thought for a while. Sure enough, she sang, "Woo, the sea breeze blows, walala, the waves roll. I play the wind and waves swing. Hoo-hoo-hoo, the sea breeze blows, walala, the waves roll, my skirt swayed under the stars." This was a song that was deep in her memory. It was as if it was engraved in her heart when she was a child. Even she did not know when she learned it. Chapter 1045. In fact, she had never been to the seaside before coming here, but she would occasionally see the sea in her dreams. She dreamed that she was singing and dancing on top of the waves under the starlight, singing this song. The tune of this song was beautiful and soothing, as if an innocent mermaid had unfolded her skirt in the wind and danced with the rise and fall of the waves. It was quiet, peaceful, and the world seemed to be moved by her singing. The originally howling cold wind seemed to be much smaller. They were not far from Yifeng, so Yifeng could naturally hear the noise they made. When the song rang out, Yifeng's hand trembled. An ice brick in his hand fell to the ground and hit his foot. Beads of blood came out, but he did not seem to notice. He turned his head and looked at Yan Ziyuan's dancing figure. His face was happy and sad, and his heart was filled with mixed feelings. This song was sung when she was still Yiyu. He had written the lyrics, composed the music, and sung by Yiyu's heavenly voice. It could make all the sharkmen intoxicated. He did not expect that she would still remember this song after becoming Yan Ziyuan. Singing it at this time, "Ziyuan, Ziyuan, could it be that you have not completely forgotten your previous life and still have some memories?" He was a little absent-minded. He did not even notice when Gu Ziyan and Yan Ziyuan came back. "Aya Yifeng, your foot is injured. Why are you so careless?" Yan Ziyuan's voice suddenly rang out. Yifeng seemed to wake up from a dream. He looked down at his foot and saw that the wound was not small. The blood soaked his entire foot red. He did not feel pain until now. But his many years as a shadow guard made him very resistant to pain, so his face only paled a little before he calmly pulled his foot back. "It's no big deal." This small injury was nothing to him, so he was too lazy to bandage it. He only used a water spell on his foot to wash away the blood and then went to build the ice house. Gu Ziyan sized up the igloo and his heart was moved. This igloo was much bigger than the previous ones and it was also much sturdier. Was Yifeng planning to rest here for a while longer? "Are you planning to stay here for a long time?" Another hour later, the construction of the igloo was finally completed. Yifeng laid out a few layers of snow wolf pelts inside and invited them in to sit down. He said, "You guys can rest here for a while and recover your strength. I will go out to look for the icy flame flower. This way we can move faster." It would be much faster for him to travel alone on the ice field, and Yan Ziyuan would no longer have to suffer from frequent travel. Although she didn't say anything along the way, Yifeng had already noticed that her hands and feet were all frostbitten because of running in the snow. Her small hands were as cold as carrots, and her cheeks were frozen solid. He built this igloo so that Yan Ziyuan could have a good rest and warm up here. And with this igloo, the ferocious beasts in the snow would not be able to attack them for a while. And with Kirin by their side to protect them, there should be no danger at all. He explained his idea and Gu Ziyan was naturally very supportive. He was already tired, and to have such a place to shelter from the wind and snow was naturally what he wanted. Of course, in order to show his generosity, he still said some high-sounding words, saying that if it wasn't for Ziyuan, he would rather go out to explore and so on. Yifeng of course did not pay any attention to his words. He did all this not for Gu Ziyan in the first place, and there was no need for him to owe him a favor. Chapter 1046. Yan Ziyuan didn't say anything. Firstly, she was really too tired. Her hands and feet were still trembling. Secondly, she felt that if Yi Feng didn't bring her and Gu Ziyan along, the efficiency of looking for the flowers would be higher. Yi Feng said a few words and then walked out. He told Kiran what he wanted. Kiran was busy bathing itself and nodded, "Don't worry. With this mythological beast here, the two of them are very safe." Yi Feng looked back at Yan Ziyuan and saw that Yan Ziyuan's eyes were still on Gu Ziyan. She didn't even look at him. His eyes darkened and he turned around to leave. White snow, black clothes, strong wind, long sword. Yi Feng's figure gradually disappeared into the distance. It seemed that loneliness always lingered around him. It made her feel inexplicably annoyed and a little distressed. Yan Ziyuan looked at Yi Feng's departing figure and was slightly absent-minded. It took her a long time to come back to her senses when Gu Ziyan called her name. "Ziyan, I heard that he was your brother in your previous life?" Gu Ziyan's expression was unclear. Not knowing why, Yan Ziyuan was slightly annoyed. "Yes. Yi Feng really dotes on you. It seems that you two were very close in your previous life." Gu Ziyan probed. "It should be. I don't remember." Yan Ziyuan's mood was getting more and more annoyed. It seemed that she didn't want Yi Feng to be her brother. Not knowing why, Yan Ziyuan suddenly felt a little disgusted with Gu Ziyan in front of her. She was shocked. How could she have such thoughts about Gu Ziyan? He was the master of Ziyan whom she liked since she was a child. He was the one she wanted to marry. She tried her best to hypnotize herself, but there was always a voice in her heart asking, "Is it like this?" She was in a daze for a moment. Gu Ziyan obviously saw her impatience. His eyes deepened. "Ziyuan, come here and sit beside me." Yan Ziyuan was stunned. "What?" Gu Ziyan smiled faintly. "Are you tired? Is your back sore? Come here, I'll help you unblock your muscles and bones. It'll make it easier for you." His tone was gentle and his words were sweet. Yan Ziyuan was hypnotized. She obediently walked over and sat beside him. Okay. They had been on the move for the past few days, and everyone could no longer care about their image. Yan Ziyuan was the same. Her hair was a little messy, and the bearskin robe wrapped around her body made her look a little bloated. But even so, her disheveled state did not diminish her beauty by much. There was also a strange fragrance on her body that was faint and would not dissipate. Gu Ziyan gently massaged her shoulders. His nose smelled the faint fragrance on her body, and he was a little restless. His lips touched her ear and he sighed softly. "Ziyuan, if it weren't for this strange disease of mine, we would be husband and wife now." Yan Ziyuan was kissed by him. Gu Ziyan often said this to her recently, and every time he said it, it meant that he wanted to bully her again. It was strange. She obviously liked him, but her body seemed to have its own will and was afraid of his touch. She subconsciously dodged to the side and avoided his lips. She took the opportunity to lie down on the wolf-skin mattress. "I'm sleepy." Gu Ziyan's eyes darkened again. Although her will was controlled by him, her body was rejecting him. He made up his mind and lay down beside her. Their bodies were close together, and he stretched out his arms to hug her. "Ziyuan, let's sleep together." Chapter 1047. Just as he was about to forcefully pull her into his embrace, a blue light flashed. Something drilled into the space between him and Yan Ziyuan. Gu Ziyan was caught off guard and pulled the thing into his arms. The cold scales made Gu Ziyan's hands tremble. He anxiously opened his eyes to take a look, and he happened to meet the little Qilin's round eyes. "You scum, let go of me!" Kiran roared in his ears. Gu Ziyan did not expect that the person he loved would be hugging a Kiran instead. He was so scared that he quickly let go of Kiran. The little Qilin rudely used its claws to push his arm to the side and kicked him again, making him move a little further away. Gu Ziyan did not dare to argue with this idiot, so he could only swallow his anger and move to the side. Kiran stretched its limbs and then directly lay between the two of them. It yawned and told Gu Ziyan, "You keep watch for the night, I'm going to sleep. Call me if there's any danger." It closed its eyes and meant to sleep. Gu Ziyan was speechless. With this idiot here, all his romantic thoughts were gone. He glanced at Yan Ziyuan, who seemed to be a galaxy away from him. She did not have any other reaction. She pulled a wolf skin blanket over her body and yawned. After a while, she fell asleep. He then looked at Kiran. Kiran glared at him. "Why are you looking at me like that? You're a man. Can't you do something as simple as keeping watch?" Although Kiran's size was smaller now, its aura was not small. When it glared, it was intimidating. Gu Ziyan did not dare to provoke it. The others probably would not do anything to him for Yan Ziyuan's sake, but this Kiran might not be the same. This guy was more irritable and difficult to talk to. It could do anything in a hurry. Therefore Gu Ziyan did not dare to provoke it. He even wanted to curry favor with it. You must be tired after running around for the whole day. Take a rest. I'll keep watch. I'll call you if there's any danger. That's more like it. Kirin closed its eyes in satisfaction. It finally had the time to contact its master. After a while, a reply came from the other side. Kirin, how are things on your side? It's very safe. Gu Ziyan and Yan Ziyuan are resting in the ice house now. What about Yi Feng? Yi Feng went out alone to look for the ice flame flower. He left me behind to take care of the two burdens. Ning Xuema thought for a moment and understood Yi Feng's meaning. She did not object and asked Kirin a few more questions. She knew that Kirin was very vigilant and had been acting as a third wheel in front of Yan Ziyuan and Gu Ziyan. She was even more relieved. Finally she instructed Kirin, if Gu Ziyan touches Ziyuan again you can scratch him. Everything will be fine as long as you leave him alive. Do you understand? Understood. Kirin answered loudly. With its master's words, it could do whatever it wanted. If Gu Ziyan was sensible enough to stop harassing Yan Ziyuan, it would be fine. If he dared to touch her again, it would scratch him until his face was full of peach blossoms. It would let him know that he had to pay a heavy price for flirting with girls under its watch. Its cat-like eyes glanced at Gu Ziyan, making Gu Ziyan shiver inexplicably. He had the illusion that he was being schemed against. After a few hours of digestion and absorption, Ning Xuema finally absorbed all the water psychokinesis on the blue crystal pillar under the guidance of Xinjiuli. Chapter 1048. This crystal nourished Ning Xuema's wood psychokinesis, increasing the wood psychokinesis in her body by a lot. She only felt that her whole body was full, and her whole body was as light as a feather. Get up and try your skills, Xinjiuli said. Ning Xuema jumped up. She used a lot of strength this time and with a light jump she went straight into the air. She hurriedly adjusted her body in the air, did a beautiful backflip, and then lightly landed on the ground. The ancients often used the phrase, as light as a swallow, to describe people's qigong, and now Ning Xuema finally tasted the feeling of being as light as a swallow. No, she felt as light as a feather. It was as if a gust of wind could blow her directly into the clouds. Your power is already close to Earth rank level 6. Once you break through to Earth rank level 6, your body will no longer be affected by the suction force of the Earth, and you can practice the flying sword technique. Xinjiuli's voice was filled with gratification. This little girl had always been unlucky, but this time she had a series of fortuitous encounters, which greatly increased her power. Even he was surprised by the speed of her power growth. At this rate, perhaps in less than 2 years she would be able to cultivate to Earth rank level 8. With her power increasing so quickly, Ning Xuema was so happy that her eyebrows were curved. At this moment her cheeks were flushed and her eyes were bright. In this world of ice and snow, she was like a red tassel slowly blooming in the white snow, full of a kind of soul-stirring beauty. Xinjiuli's mind was in turmoil. He raised his hand and pulled her close, encircling her in his arms, and lowered his head to kiss her lips. Xuema, quickly level up. Recently he had been kissing her frequently, and Ning Xuema had already stopped resisting. Sometimes she would even hug his neck in response. But now, before his lips could touch those seductive red lips, her 2 fingers pressed on his lips, and slightly pushed outwards, making him unable to kiss her. He slightly narrowed his eyes and looked at her, his eyes filled with questions. Ning Xuema firmly pushed him away with a smile that was not a smile. Great God, I don't want to be taken advantage of by you for no reason. Everything will have to wait until I reach level 8 before you give me an answer. Although she was very sure that she liked him, she also had her own bottom line. She would not confuse herself to him. Before that, I'll just treat him as my master. She didn't want to let herself fall into a true master-disciple relationship, so everything should wait until his attitude was clear. Xinjiuli looked down at her. It seemed that he could no longer be intimate with her before he gave her a definite answer. He didn't say anything else and only raised his hand to pat her head. Then hurry up and level up. Guru among your disciples who leveled up the fastest. Ning Xuema shook her head to avoid his hand and walked backwards. You. Xinjiuli spat out a single word. I'm indeed the smartest. Ning Xuema said proudly, like a little witch asking a magic mirror. You're not modest at all. Excessive modesty is arrogance. Ning Xuema raised her head handsomely. I'm just telling the truth. Oh, that's true. But you're not the smartest, I'm the smartest. Haha, you're an old fox. Old fox? Jili repeated this word with a smile that was not a smile. His figure suddenly approached her. Ning Xuema immediately stepped back and smiled. My mistake, my mistake. You've lived for thousands of years but you're still a young man. Jili was speechless. Ning Xuema still walked backwards. Guru, you must have been abnormally smart when you were young, right? Tell me about your teenage years. She was actually very curious about the Guru's past. Chapter 1049. Jili lowered his eyes and said, It's been too long. I don't remember. That was true. He had lived for so long. How could he remember things that happened thousands of years ago? Asking him to remember when he was a teenager should be like asking her to remember when she was a baby. It was so long ago that it felt like a century ago. What are the Almighty's parents like? Which couple would give birth to such a freak? Jili shook his head. I don't have parents. The Almighty was actually an orphan. Ning Xuema immediately felt that her sympathy was overflowing. They must have passed away a long time ago. So you've been alone all this time? Jili's eyes flashed slightly. He automatically ignored her first question and only answered the second one. Yes, I've been alone all this time, a person's loneliness, a person's desolation. Although he was among all living beings, he was also drifting away from all living beings, his mind was in a trance, and a conversation inexplicably appeared in his mind. Supreme Divinity, aren't you bored being alone all this time? How about I always accompany you in the future? No need. I don't need anyone to accompany me. It's so boring to be alone. You see people getting married and enjoying family happiness. Aren't you envious just by looking at them? I'm not envious. You must be envious. You also want your own family, right? Why don't you marry me? You tried all kinds of ways to climb into my bed just to make me marry you? Of course. You think I just want to have a one-night stand with you? You're a girl, aren't you ashamed to talk to a man like this? Now that you mention it, it's indeed a little embarrassing. Why don't you try to propose to me? The conversation came to an abrupt end. Jili's heart was slightly shocked. He couldn't help but want to think about the conversation, but he couldn't remember anything. All that was left was an indescribable sour feeling. However, this situation was much better than the past. He couldn't remember anything from a long time ago. He calmed himself down and didn't want to think about it anymore. The past was hard to recall. No matter how sweet and thrilling it was just the past. He couldn't even remember anything. Therefore he could only grasp the present. He had to hold on to the delicate girl in front of him so that he wouldn't have any regrets. Ning Xuema contacted Kirin again. Knowing that nothing unexpected had happened, she was relieved. Let's go and continue looking for the ice flame flower. The sooner we find it, the sooner we can leave this damned place. Ning Xuema took the lead and ran forward. She didn't know why, but this place always gave her an ominous feeling. She really wanted to leave as soon as possible. She had just run a few steps when she suddenly felt a burst of heat in her dantian. Her ears buzzed as if her blood was rushing to her head. She immediately felt a little dizzy. She was stunned and immediately stopped in her tracks. What's wrong? Jili had been following her closely. I suddenly felt dizzy. Ning Xuema shook her head. That strange feeling had already disappeared. Jili didn't say anything. Instead he grabbed her wrist and checked her pulse. After a while he let go of her hand. I don't feel anything wrong. It's probably because I haven't slept well these few days. Ning Xuema didn't mind. She naturally couldn't rest well in such a damned place. Moreover, she had been absorbing the snow spiritual power before and didn't rest at all. She looked forward again. As far as her eyes could see, it was snow white. Chapter 1050. Fortunately his kung fu was not low. Otherwise he would have gotten snow blindness if he didn't wear sunglasses for a few days. Where the hell is this ice flame flower? Kirin and the others have searched so many volcanoes, but they couldn't find one, Ning Xuema said angrily. The ice flame flower is naturally at the intersection of ice and lava, Jili explained. Ning Xuema was stunned. You mean this flower should be near the crater of the volcano? The crater of the volcano is covered by a thick layer of ice. Do we have to go deep into the ground to look for it? Jili held her hand and walked. It's important to find a fated person to pick the flower. Let's go. Let's see how lucky you are. He was tricking her again. Ning Xuema looked up unintentionally and saw the clouds in the sky surging and rolling. When did the weather change again? Was there going to be another big snowstorm? Rumble? A series of muffled thunder sounded in the distant sky. Ning Xuema was surprised. It's common to see storms in the ice field. Why is there thunder? Didn't the weather warm up and thunder only started in spring? No matter how much it snowed in winter, there wouldn't be thunder. Why did the weather here violate the laws of nature? Shinjuli also looked up at the sky. His eyes flashed with a touch of darkness. He said lightly, the weather here can't be judged by common sense. Okay, let's go. The two of them braved the wind and snow and walked forward. What should we do when the snowstorm comes later? Ning Xuema looked at the lead gray sky and asked him. What's there to be afraid of? Let's just go. Ning Xuema said, aren't we going to find a place to hide from the wind and snow? Yifeng often builds an igloo. Shinjuli raised his hand and rubbed her head. So you want an igloo? That's easy. I'll build one for you when the wind and snow get heavy. Just as he was speaking, a snowy mist rolled over from the distance. It was clear that a storm was about to arrive. The storm is coming. Where is your ice house? Ning Xuema tilted her head and looked at him. Shinjuli pulled her to a place where there was no wind. Then he waved his sleeve to the ground. Then Ning Xuema's eyes widened. It was as if there was a knife cutting across the icy ground. Pieces of neatly cut ice bricks jumped up from the ground and automatically arranged themselves. In just a few minutes, a beautiful igloo was formed on the snowy ground. The style of the igloo was quite similar to the layout of her side palace on the Tianyin Peak, except that it was much smaller. The green jade brick turned into an ice brick. There were even engraved patterns on the ice bricks at the entrance. They were simple and beautiful. He waved his sleeve again and a wave of water came out from his sleeve, pouring onto the ice house. The weather was so cold that a drop of water would turn into ice. After the wave of water hit it, it froze solid in the blink of an eye. It looked like a crystal palace. The Almighty built a house in the blink of an eye as if he was blowing air. Ning Xuema couldn't help but sigh. Almighty, it's so easy for you to build a house. Why didn't you build one when we were traveling together? If he had shown this ability earlier, they would have suffered less. Shinjuli said lightly, only the Venerable Dizun knows this ability. Han Shanhua doesn't. Ning Xuema understood. The Almighty didn't want to reveal his identity as the Venerable Dizun. This was also true. It seemed that only a few people knew that Han Shanhua was the Venerable Dizun's incarnation. Naturally, it had to be kept a secret. She was also interested. She pointed her finger forward and countless vines grew from her fingertips. Chapter 1051. The countless vines that grew out climbed up the igloo like Boston ivy. After a while, the vibrant greenery was about to cover the igloo completely. In the vast expanse of whiteness, the greenery was eye-catching and exceptionally pleasing to the eye. Shinjuli glanced at her and said, your kung fu has improved a lot. Ning Xuema was proud. Of course. She walked around the igloo and said, our cooperation is quite seamless. Of course, when the two of us work together, we are a perfect pair and invincible. Shinjuli casually said and pulled her into the igloo. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat when she heard what he said. A perfect pair. Did he also think that she was a perfect pair with him? She was finally not completely useless in front of him anymore. She would become stronger in the future so that she could be worthy of him. Only then could she be worthy of the phrase, a perfect pair. She was shocked when she walked in. The interior of the igloo was covered with an oversized bearskin that covered the entire floor. It was furry and felt like stepping on soft grass. It was unusually comfortable. Needless to say, this bearskin was from the big white bear that she had hunted. She didn't notice when the Almighty skinned the bear. The Almighty loved cleanliness, so this bearskin was unusually clean and smooth like satin. Ning Xuema pounced on it and rolled on it. Then she lay down on her back and said, it's so comfortable. The snowstorm had started outside and the snowflakes were as big as a mat. The strong wind mixed with the ice and snow, stirring up heaven and earth. She couldn't tell where the sky was and where the earth was. Outside it was snowing heavily, but inside the igloo was as warm as spring. Ning Xuema lay on the bearskin mattress and felt unusually satisfied. She ate a few pieces of soft pastries that the Almighty took out and looked at the snowstorm outside. She wondered how Yifeng and the rest were doing. They should be hiding from the wind and snow in the igloo, right? When Gu Ziyan and Lin Yiqin woke up, Yifeng hadn't returned yet. Outside, the cold wind howled angrily. Snow and ice danced wildly. The howling of the wind sounded like the cries of ghosts. Yan Ziyuan looked at the wind and snow outside the igloo, lost in thought. Why isn't Yifeng back yet? Where would he hide in such a huge snowstorm? With his ability he should be able to dodge it easily, right? She comforted herself like this, but her heart was still a little uneasy. Gu Ziyan had been hungry for a long time. Previously, he had picked up an egg with great difficulty and was happily preparing to roast it. He did not expect that the moment he cracked open the egg, it would attract the egg's mother, the white monster. In his shock, the egg fell to the ground and shattered. This time, not only did he not get to eat the egg, he also attracted the anger of the monster. Gu Ziyan, who was still in a state of shock, had long forgotten about his hunger. Now that he was out of danger and had rested enough, he felt his stomach rumbling. He had been so scared that he ran away that he didn't have much physical strength in the first place. Right now he only felt extreme hunger. His stomach rumbled like a drum, louder and louder. Grumble? Grumble? Yan Ziyuan suddenly heard a strange sound. Looking for the source of the sound, she realized that Gu Ziyan's stomach was singing the empty fort strategy happily. Gu Ziyan's face turned red. Why did he always make a fool of himself in front of his sweetheart? Yan Ziyuan asked with concern, Ziyan, are you hungry? I still have some dry food here. You eat first. After saying that, she took out the 2 remaining pastries and handed them to Gu Ziyan. Therefore, a good piece of skin was full of holes after being skinned by him, and the wind was leaking out. He couldn't stop shivering. From time to time he moved his hands and feet to keep warm. The hunger in his stomach was even stronger. After a long time he saw that the snow outside had stopped. He was cold and hungry. He couldn't sit still anymore. He looked outside again. 6 to 8 hours had passed, and Yi Feng still hadn't returned. He couldn't help but ask, Kiran, how long do we have to wait? Why is Yi Feng gone for so long? Did he leave us behind and leave by himself? Chapter 1053. Yan Ziyuan couldn't help but look at him and subconsciously refuted him. He won't. Her heart skipped a beat. She actually refuted her husband's words for an unrelated man? Gu Ziyan froze and looked at Yan Ziyuan. His mood wasn't very good. Kiran snorted from the side, Don't measure the heart of a gentleman with your petty heart. He won't be as selfish as you. Gu Ziyan's face flushed red. He was able to speak frankly and eloquently in front of those scholars, debating with them. But when he met Kiran, he felt like a scholar meeting a soldier who couldn't reason with him. This mythological beast had a very bad impression of him and didn't give him any face at all. He put on an appearance of not arguing with a child and gently smiled. He said to Yan Ziyuan, Brother Yi is a righteous sharkman and he was your secret guard. He shouldn't abandon us and leave by himself. For some reason Yan Ziyuan didn't want to hear Gu Ziyan say that Yi Feng was her secret guard. I already said that he was my brother in my previous life. He definitely won't abandon us. Maybe he's still looking for that flower. Let's wait and see. Brother? Yi Feng's feelings for her were definitely not the same as a brother's feelings for his sister. Gu Ziyan sneered in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. His voice was still very gentle. I mean, did he lose his way in the snow and can't find his way back? Why don't we go out to look for him and help him? Yan Ziyuan was a little hesitant. Yi Feng told us to wait here. What if we go out to look for him and he comes back and can't find us? In fact, Gu Ziyan was hungry and wanted to let the little Qilin go out to hunt. The so-called meeting up with someone was just an excuse. He was quite eloquent and said a few more reasons why they had to go out to look for him. Finally, Yan Ziyuan was moved. Gu Ziyan looked at Kiran, who was lying on the side. Kiran, Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Kiran. Kiran, is Kiran someone like you can call me that? Call me Great God Kiran. This mythological beast is a little hungry and has a bad temper. If you say something wrong again, this mythological beast will directly eat you. Gu Ziyan's response, and he didn't dare to say anything more. He could only endure the hunger in his stomach and tactfully talk to Kiran. Of course, he also talked about the problem of food. He was a man's. He's SSSS. It was no wonder that he was a scholar. His words were reasonable and meaningful. Finally, the little Qilin was convinced. It got up and swayed its body. You two wait here first. I'll go find some food and help Yi Feng along the way. Gu Ziyan shook his head. You can't, Great God Kiran. If you leave, who will protect Ziyuan and me? Why don't you take the two of us to look for food? You can leave a mark for Yi Feng along the way. That way Yi Feng can follow the mark and find us. You don't have to make an extra trip. That was true. Kiran stopped and weighed the pros and cons. With its current ability, it shouldn't be a problem to protect the two of them. If it really couldn't, it could also lower itself to carry them. In this ice field, Kiran's martial arts might not be the best, but in terms of speed, Kirin was one of the best. There will be a climax tomorrow. Are you looking forward to it? Chapter 1054. Kirin nodded its big head. You two follow me closely. Kirin felt that its words were unnecessary. Gu Ziyan was now following it all the time as if it wanted to grow on its body. Kirin could almost flatten it by turning around. Kirin's mouth twitched. You don't have to follow me so closely. I'm afraid that I'll accidentally step on you. Only then did Gu Ziyan put some distance between them. Kirin led the way in front, Yan Ziyuan in the middle and Gu Ziyan at the back. They maintained this formation and moved forward slowly. Kirin took a few steps and left a paw print on the snow. This way Yi Feng could follow the footprints and find them. Kirin's pace was relatively large, so it unknowingly fell behind the two of them. Only the dim stars in the sky were shining faintly. Everything around them could not be seen clearly. Ah! Yan Ziyuan, who was walking in the middle, exclaimed loudly in the silent night. Kirin hurriedly turned around, only to see Gu Ziyan standing there in a daze. Yan Ziyuan was nowhere to be seen. What happened? Damn, where did Yan Ziyuan go? I lost a person. If Yan Ziyuan died, how could it explain to its master? Kirin hurriedly ran back, only to find that there was a huge ice crack on the ground. It was so dark that it could not see the bottom. This ice crack was originally covered by ice and snow. Yan Ziyuan happened to step on it, so it suddenly sank. Gu Ziyan crouched at the entrance of the cave looking anxious. Ziyuan. Ziyuan. Are you in there? Can you hear me? Gu Ziyan's voice echoed in the cave, but Yan Ziyuan's words could not be heard. Kirin looked down. Although it had excellent eyesight, it could not see how deep the cave was. If Yan Ziyuan fell down, he was afraid Kirin's head exploded. He anxiously walked around the entrance of the cave. No, it had to go down and take a look. If he was alive, it had to see him. If he was dead, it had to see his corpse. After figuring this out, the little Qilin jumped down without any hesitation. Gu Ziyan was left dumbstruck at the entrance of the cave. Gu Ziyan's face turned slightly pale as he looked down at the big hole. That pitch-black hole of unknown depth was like the huge mouth of a monster that was choosing people to devour. His beloved had fallen. He was very anxious, but he didn't have the guts to jump down. Forget it, Kirin should go down. If even Kirin couldn't find her, he wouldn't be able to either. He would only be sending himself to his death. After figuring this out, Gu Ziyan decided to sit beside the cave entrance. This ice crevice was not straight up and down. It was slightly sloped. After Kirin jumped down, he slid down like a whirlwind. The walls of the ice crevice were very smooth and hard. Kirin desperately scratched the walls a few times, but only left a few white marks on the walls. However, the entrance of the cave was quite narrow. Kirin couldn't extend his wings, so he could only use his telekinesis to slightly reduce the speed of his descent. There was a faint smell of Yan Ziyuan in this cave. He was sure that Yan Ziyuan had definitely fallen down, but he was not sure if she was still alive. Kirin shouted, Yan Ziyuan! Kirin! Kirin! His loud voice echoed in the cave. Kirin almost fainted from the shock. He didn't dare to shout anymore. The lower he went, the more complicated the terrain became. From time to time, there would be one or two huge rocks sticking out. Kirin was caught off guard and almost crashed into one. Fortunately, he slapped out his claws in time and used the reaction force to avoid the huge rock. He continued to roll and crawl down. Chapter 1055. The further it went down, the more frightened it became. It was such a steep slope and such a dangerous terrain. Yan Ziyuan was a weak girl. She would most likely die if she fell down like this unless a miracle happened. Kirin felt that its heart had sunk to the bottom of a hole. Fortunately, the downward slope had eased a lot. Kirin scratched and finally slowed down. It was pitch black in the cave. Fortunately, its beast eyes could see in the dark, so Kirin saw a fork in the road not far below. Damn, there is a fork in the road. Which one should I choose? Kirin slid down at lightning speed. Its green eyes were wide open and it looked anxious. Its big head moved back and forth to smell. Before it could decide which side to choose, the fork in the road was right in front of it. It could not stop its momentum. It made up its mind and chose the hole on the right. Kirin shouted up, I choose the hole on the right. Ho, ho, ho. The sound was like thunder echoing back and forth in the cave. Kirin had closed its ears in advance to avoid being destroyed by its own voice. Gu Ziyan was as timid as a mouse. He would not dare to jump down and he would not dare to walk around. He must be guarding the hole at the moment. The little Chilin's voice was loud enough that it was certain that Gu Ziyan could hear it. When the reinforcements came, they would definitely choose the hole on the left. Kirin adjusted its posture as it fell. It was ready to kiss the ground at any time. Its skin was thick, so it would not be a problem for it to fall once or twice. However, it was afraid that Yan Ziyuan was at the bottom of the cave. It would be bad if she was not killed by the fall but by the fall. All right. Reinforcements. How could it forget about its master? Kirin immediately contacted Ning Xuema while it was falling. Master. Ning Xuema and Xin Jiuli were also about to set out to find the ice flame flower. Ning Xuema's heart sank when she heard Kirin's anxious voice. Before she could ask, Kirin had already shouted, Master, Yan Ziyuan fell into the ice hole. Come and save her with the Almighty. Ning Xuema's heart suddenly jumped. No one knew better than her how dangerous the ice holes that suddenly appeared on the ice field were. Some of the ice holes were thousands of meters long, as if they led directly to the depths of hell. If Yan Ziyuan fell into such a place with her mediocre skills, she would lose her life. Without saying another word, Ning Xuema dashed towards the little Chilin's direction. She had already reached Earth Realm rank 5, so her telepathy with the little Chilin was already completely harmonious. She didn't need the little Chilin to report its location and could quickly locate it. Then, in the shortest time possible, she would be able to find it. Xin Jiuli picked her up. Tell me the location, I'll take you there. The Almighty's speed was naturally as fast as flying. After Ning Xuema told him the location of Kirin, she asked Kirin, what's going on? Weren't you waiting in the ice house built by Yi Feng? How long has she fallen in? Kirin's voice was angry. It's all Gu Ziyan's fault, that scumbag. Gu Ziyan was like an ant on a hot pan. From time to time he circled around the hole and kept looking at it. Suddenly Kirin's roar came from the hole. That sound seemed to come from the core of the earth. Gu Ziyan's heart sank. How deep was this hole? Could they still come up? Chapter 1056. He thought that even if his psychokinesis was at its peak, he would not be able to get out of here. Now that he had no psychokinesis, he was just like an ordinary person. It was impossible for him to get out alone. They could not come up. Would he not be trapped here until he died? When he thought of this, his entire face turned pale. Suddenly Kirin's roar came from the bottom of the hole. I choose the right. Right. Was there a fork in the road? Gu Ziyan subconsciously remembered the little Chilin's words. Although the sound was clear this time, it was much weaker. It could be seen how deep Kirin had fallen. It was easy to fall down but difficult to come up. Kirin was powerful, but could it really come up from such a deep hole? If it could not come up, then he would not be able to contact Ning Xuema and the rest. His face turned even paler, but he could only wait here. Was he going to wait for death here? Was he, the Guqin saint, going to die in such a remote and desolate place? No, he could not. Thinking of that scene, Gu Ziyan's face turned even paler. He was almost scared out of his wits by death. He anxiously circled the hole a few times and almost slipped and fell down. What should I do? What should I do? Right. Yi Feng. Yi Feng had not fallen down yet. He could definitely bring him out of this ice field. However, if Yan Ziyuan died, Yi Feng would probably want to kill him. He would definitely not bring him along. Then he could only count on Ning Xuema and the rest. Kirin should have informed its master, right? Perhaps Ning Xuema and the rest would arrive soon. Ziyuan might not be dead yet. Gu Ziyan calmed down a little and began to look into the distance from time to time. He had never looked forward to the arrival of Yi Feng and Ning Xuema so much. Yi Feng walked through 3 or 4 ice valleys in a row, but the ice flame flowers were still like flowers in the water, the moon in the mirror. He could not find any clues. In the process of searching, he naturally encountered a snowstorm. This storm was unprecedentedly strong, and the sky seemed to be upside down. It was almost impossible to walk in such weather. He could only find a leeward place and hide in the gap between 2 ice rocks to avoid the snow. After the snow stopped, the surrounding scenery changed. The hillside became an ice mountain, and the ice floe became a valley. Fortunately, Yi Feng had a special ability to find his way, so he did not get lost. Originally, he wanted to continue looking for Yan Ziyuan, but in the end he was worried about her. He was afraid that she would be worried if he didn't go back for a long time, and he was also afraid that Gu Ziyuan would cause trouble again. So after some thought, he decided to go back and take a look first. Along the way, he didn't know why, but he felt a little uneasy. The fear of losing something was like a cage that tightly wrapped around him. He simply increased his speed to the maximum and returned to the ice house in just over 2 hours. No one. Yifeng looked around the room like a whirlwind, but he could not find anyone. What happened? Why was there no one? Did they get attacked by wild beasts? Yifeng looked around carefully. No, it was not a wild beast attack. Everything was clean and tidy, and there were no traces of fighting. He checked the traces of their departure. The traces were neat and tidy. Obviously they left by themselves. Did they go to look for food? If so, they should have left a mark for him. After figuring this out, Yifeng began to carefully search for the marks that Kirin and the rest had left behind. Chapter 1057. Although there was still wind and snow blowing from time to time, covering the footprints on the ground, there were still many clues left behind. His tracking skills had always been very good, so after searching for a while he found their marks. Based on the depth of the marks, he calculated how long they had been gone. They had been gone for less than 2 hours. With Kirin by their side, there shouldn't be any great danger. Yifeng's worried heart finally relaxed. He followed Kirin's footprints and rushed in that direction. He was really as fast as lightning. Was fine. Maybe they were just looking for food and wouldn't encounter any monsters. Even if they did, Kirin would be able to deal with them. Yifeng kept comforting himself in his heart, but the uneasiness in his heart was like a black shadow that kept expanding and spreading. The fear for no reason was like a spider that nibbled at him bit by bit. His heart tightened bit by bit, almost suffocating him. While he was running, his heart suddenly beat violently, as if someone had suddenly pinched it. Pain, fear, fear. Countless indescribable emotions flooded his heart. Something had happened. Sharkman's sixth sense had always been very sharp. For him to suddenly have this kind of reaction, something must have happened to Yan Ziyun. At this time, Yifeng's speed had already exceeded the limits of his body. The wind and snow were like knives, slicing into his skin piece by piece. His exposed skin was even cut open. Bright red blood fell to the ground and instantly condensed into red beads. From afar, he saw a white figure standing in front of him, and his heart suddenly sank. That person was Gu Ziyan, but Yan Ziyuan and Kirin were nowhere to be seen. Gu Ziyan saw a black figure in the distance shooting towards them like an arrow. He was delighted. Finally, someone had come. He hurriedly waved his hand and shouted, "Yifeng, over here, over here." Yifeng appeared beside him in the blink of an eye and grabbed Gu Ziyan's collar. "Where's Ziyuan?" Gu Ziyan was lifted up like a little chick and his face turned red. "Cough, cough, let go of me, cough, cough." As soon as Yifeng let go, Gu Ziyan fell to the side. He coughed as he pointed at the crack in the ice and said, "Ahem." Ziyan fell down. Ahem. Kirin also jumped down. There's still no movement. Why? Yifeng looked into the crack in the ice and his head exploded. She fell into such a deep crevice by herself. He did not wait for Gu Ziyan to finish his words and jumped into the crevice. Gu Ziyan. He was stunned for a moment, then suddenly rushed to the entrance of the cave and shouted, "Kirin chose the passage on the right." Kirin chose the right passage. There was no sound coming from the cave. The cave was like a black hole, swallowing everything that entered it. Yifeng naturally heard that sentence and silently noted it down. Although he was falling at a high speed, he did not panic at all. It was as if he was on flat ground. He carefully observed the traces around him. There were a few scratch marks on the walls of the cave. Judging from the length and strength of the scratch marks, they should have been left by Kirin. Ziyuan did not have that much strength. How was Ziyuan now? Was she injured? Yifeng was burning with anxiety. But he was a rational person after all. He could control his panic and tried his best to calm down. A moment later he saw the fork in the road from afar. He turned around and slid into the passage on the left. "Ziyuan, Ziyuan, you must stay alive. Wait for me." Chapter 1058. Gu Ziyan shouted at the entrance of the cave for a long time, but there was no response. He was so angry that his face turned red and he angrily stomped his feet. These idiots! Idiots! He had hoped for the stars and the moon for a savior, but in the end he jumped down again. Gu Ziyan almost wanted to curse. But what else could he do? He could only obediently wait for a miracle to happen. He looked around, afraid that another monster would jump out. Right now he was the only one here, so he didn't have any ability to resist. If a monster came, he could only be a snack. After an unknown amount of time, he suddenly heard a deep rumbling sound coming from underground. It seemed like something underground had collapsed and the ground under his feet was shaking. Gu Ziyan was standing at the edge of the ice crack and was almost shaken to the point of falling down. He was so scared that his face turned pale. He quickly took a few steps back and tripped on a piece of ice, falling down on his butt. He accidentally sat on a sharp piece of ice. It almost hit his butt. He groaned in pain and jumped up while holding his butt. He spun in a circle and his face turned pale and his body trembled. He was jumping up and down in pain when a faint white light flashed in the distance and two people appeared in front of him. He looked carefully and was overjoyed. "Madame Ning, Mr. Han, you're finally here. Quickly save Ziyuan and the others." Ning Xuema already knew the general situation from Kirin. She looked at the man in front of her and wished she could kick him down. She looked into the ice crack. It was so deep that she couldn't see the bottom. "How long has it been since Ziyuan fell down? Is there any movement down there?" "She fell down almost 2 hours ago. Yi Feng also went down and Kirin, there's no news from them. There was a tremor coming from below. Seems like a cave has collapsed." Gu Ziyan told her everything he knew. "Cave." Ning Xuema's expression became even worse. It would be a miracle if someone didn't die from falling into the ice crack. If there was another cave, she could only go down to investigate. Just as she was about to contact Kirin again, a green light flashed not far away. Kirin ran over like a whirlwind. "Master, you're here." Gu Ziyan was dumbfounded. This Qilin clearly jumped down from this crack in the ice. Why did it run back from afar? Little Apple cut the crap. "What's the situation inside?" Ning Xuema immediately asked. "It's complicated. The slope was very steep and I couldn't stop falling. There was also a fork in the road and I chose the one on the right. Yan Ziyuan wasn't there. After I fell to the bottom I searched for her but there was no trace of her. She must have fallen into the hole on the left. The cave was steep and narrow so I couldn't go back the way I came. I could only grope my way forward. It took me a lot of detours to get out." "Then, did you notice that the ground was sinking?" "No, the path I took was very normal. It was just that when I was about to reach the exit, I felt a slight tremor. Even if the ground sank, it wasn't the path I was on." Speaking up to this point, the little Qilin's voice suddenly stopped. If it wasn't on the path it was on, then it was on the path Yan Ziyuan fell into. It turned around and wanted to jump down again. "I'll go to the other hole to check. Little Apple, stay up here. Guru, let's go down." Ning Xuema ordered and stopped Kirin in his tracks. A white figure flashed in front of them. Ning Xuema pulled Shinjioli and jumped into the crack. Chapter 1059. Gu Ziyan was speechless. He wanted to say, "Since the ground has caved in, Ziyuan and Yi Feng must have met with misfortune. We shouldn't waste our efforts." But before he could finish his sentence, Ning Xuema and Han Shanyue were nowhere to be seen. His heart suddenly sank. If Yan Ziyuan and Yi Feng had met with misfortune down there, then Ning Xuema and Han Shanyue would probably not care about him anymore. Not to mention curing his incurable disease, he might not even be able to walk out of this ice field. His heart was filled with fear as he glanced at the little Qilin beside him. His eyes turned slightly before he suddenly knelt down and prayed loudly to the heavens, "May the heavens bless and protect Xian. Disciple is willing to sacrifice 10 years of his lifespan in exchange for her safety." Kirin glanced at him coldly. If this man didn't cast the twin curse on Yan Ziyuan, why would they come to this godforsaken place? Why would Yan Ziyuan fall into the ice hole and have no idea whether she was dead or alive? He was the main culprit. Kirin clenched its claws and tried to control its emotions. It didn't fly into a rage immediately. If Yan Ziyuan and Yi Feng were fine, then it would forget about it. If Yan Ziyuan had met with misfortune, then it wouldn't hesitate to tear this man into pieces and feed him to the wolves. Yan Ziyuan didn't know how long she had been rolling down. The cave was dark and silent. Time seemed to have stopped here. She tried to stop herself from falling but to no avail. She could only adjust her body while rolling. She knew some kung fu, so this kind of adjustment was very useful for her. At least she managed to avoid some protruding rocks and sharp ice. She was dizzy and had to accept her fate as she waited for the moment she reached the bottom of the cave. Fortunately, as she rolled, the slope seemed to be getting gentler. She shouldn't die from the fall. However, she was, after all, a rich young lady who had never experienced the vicissitudes of life. Although she had followed Ning Xuema to the snowfield and learned a lot of knowledge that she couldn't learn in the boudoir and had become bolder, she was still afraid of the dark. Coupled with the fear of the unknown in front of the inky darkness, her heart tightened into a ball as she frantically rolled around. For some reason, the first person she thought of wasn't Gu Ziyan but Yi Feng. Including when she instantly fell into the hole, she subconsciously called out Yi Feng's name. She recalled the time when he rescued her from the monster's mouth. He was worried that she would be scared, so he thoughtfully covered her eyes. "Don't be scared, I'm here." With him around she always felt at ease. But he wasn't there. Yifeng, where are you?" "I'm so scared." She didn't know how long she had been rolling down. Maybe it was a few minutes or maybe it was a few seconds. Just when she felt that she was about to roll into hell, a red light suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. Yan Ziyuan subconsciously closed her eyes. Then her body suddenly stopped. It seemed like she had fallen somewhere. She fell so hard that her vision turned black and she almost fainted. I can't faint." She desperately bit her lips. That sharp pain pulled her back a little. Then she slowly opened her eyes. After a long period of darkness, she suddenly saw light. Her vision was hazy, and then she felt that it was a red light that was almost as bright as the stars. Yan Ziyuan wanted to open her eyes to see clearly, but her vision suddenly turned black and she fainted. Blue sky, white clouds, sea, flying seagulls, beautiful shark men. Chapter 1060. Yan Ziyuan was in a daze as if she had a very long dream. In the dream, she seemed to have become a mermaid, freely swimming in the blue waves. "Ziyuan, wake up! Ziyuan, wake up!" After an unknown amount of time, Yan Ziyuan felt someone anxiously calling her name. Her eyelashes trembled, her fingers moved, and she finally woke up. Her vision was still a bit hazy because she had lost too much blood. She couldn't see the person in front of her clearly. In the blur, she seemed to see Yifeng's anxious face in the red light. She reached out her hand. "Yifeng? Is that you? Did you come to save me? Am I hallucinating?" Yifeng grabbed her hand. Her hands were originally as tender as spring onions, white and soft, but now they were dripping with blood. The pink wounds were slightly open. "It's me, Ziyuan, you have to hold on." Yifeng's voice was trembling. When he arrived, Yan Ziyuan was lying in a pool of blood. She had already lost consciousness. There were many abrasions all over her body. Although the wounds weren't deep, for some reason the blood kept flowing. In this kind of environment, any insignificant wound could be fatal. Yan Ziyuan was extremely weak now. When she saw Yifeng, her uneasy heart finally calmed down. It was good that he came. She was safe with him here. Yan Ziyuan relaxed and fainted again. Her clothes were tattered, her face was pale and haggard. Her lips that were once as bright as flower petals were now as pale as a flower in the rain. It seemed like they could wither at any time. Yifeng held her hand tightly. His face was even paler than Yan Ziyuan's. Yan Ziyuan in his arms seemed to have turned into Yi Yu from his previous life. Her body was covered in blood, and her body was turning cold in his arms, but he was helpless. No, he couldn't let her walk down the same path as in his previous life. No matter what, he had to make sure she was fine. He couldn't let her die in his arms again. He helped her up so that her back was facing him. Then he placed his hands on her back to heal her injuries. "Ziyuan, you must hang in there, hang in there." Yifeng sent Sharkman's will of origin into Yan Ziyuan, checking her wounds and broken meridians before gently healing them. Gradually, the wounds on her body began to heal and scab over. Her face was slightly flushed and her cold hands and feet began to warm up. After about an hour, Yan Ziyuan finally woke up. Her vision gradually cleared. Suddenly she felt someone behind her. She turned her head and saw Yifeng treating her injuries. Just as she was about to speak, Yifeng shook his head at her, signaling her to be quiet. Yan Ziyuan then obediently maintained her cross-legged posture, allowing Yifeng's psychokinesis to continuously flow into her body. She felt warmth all over her body and the painful wounds from before seemed to be slowly healing. It really was him. So he really came to save her. Yan Ziyuan suddenly had the urge to cry. She didn't cry when no one responded to her when she asked for help. She didn't cry when she was alone in the dark and her life was in danger. She didn't cry when she kept falling and getting scratched. But now when she saw Yifeng, she felt wronged and afraid. She couldn't help but feel a lump in her throat, and tears kept welling up in her eyes. She was afraid that she would distract Yifeng, so she forced herself to hold back her tears. Like a small stone being thrown into the water, at first it was a small ripple, but then it gradually rippled through her entire heart. There was a burst of warmth that kept washing over her. Chapter 1061. There was a burst of warmth that washed away the anxiety and fear. It was like a spring breeze in March, dispelling the darkness and bringing light. After another incense stick worth of time, Yifeng finally stopped. He wanted to get up, but he suddenly felt powerless. He held onto the cave wall to support himself. His face was pale and his forehead was covered in sweat. It was clear that healing Yan Ziyuan had consumed a lot of his energy. Yan Ziyuan quickly got up and supported his swaying body. She asked with concern, "Are you all right?" Yifeng closed his eyes and waited for the dizziness to pass. He had used too much of the mermaid's original telekinesis to heal all the wounds on Yan Ziyuan's body. His energy had been consumed too quickly. It was like losing a lot of blood, so dizziness was normal. He opened his eyes again and saw Yan Ziyuan's bright eyes looking at him anxiously. He knew that she was worried about him. His heart warmed and his voice became gentle. "I'm fine." Yan Ziyuan had been supporting Yifeng. She was afraid that if she let go, Yifeng would fall. Hearing him say that he was fine, her beautiful eyebrows slightly knit together. "Yifeng, you should rest a bit more. Don't force yourself. Don't force yourself." Yiyu had said this to him many times. Today he had finally heard it from her mouth again. Yifeng stared at her for a while. His eyes seemed to be filled with emotions. His voice was slightly hoarse as if he was trying to suppress something. "All right, I won't force myself." Yan Ziyuan didn't know why her heart was in a trance. A voice seemed to pass through thousands of mountains and rivers, carrying a bit of love. "I promise you I won't force myself." Her heart suddenly throbbed with pain. This feeling was both sweet and sad, making her feel at a loss. Yifeng sat cross-legged and entered a meditative state to recuperate. Yan Ziyuan stayed by his side, quietly lost in thought. Her mind was in a mess before, but for some reason when she saw Yifeng's calm face, her chaotic thoughts gradually calmed down. Yifeng had this kind of invisible power that made people feel at ease, calm, and as steady as a mountain. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Yifeng slowly exhaled and stopped. When he stood up again, his complexion was much better. Yan Ziyuan also stood up and carefully looked at his complexion. After confirming that he was fine, she let out a long sigh of relief, feeling as if a large stone had been lifted from her heart. Only then did she remember Gu Ziyan. "Yifeng, have you seen Ziyan?" Yifeng's eyes darkened. "He's up there. He's safe." Gu Ziyan was up there? In other words, Yifeng jumped down by himself to save her? Her heart was moved again. Yifeng quietly observed his surroundings. After a while he said quietly, "We can't go out from the exit above. There's a cave here, let's explore." He didn't feel at ease leaving Yan Ziyuan alone, so he could only bring her along. Yan Ziyuan began to pay attention to her surroundings. She exclaimed, "What a beautiful place." This place was very strange. No one would have thought that there would be such a beautiful scene under the cave. Everywhere was crystal clear red. They were surrounded by red crystals, red icicles, red ice blades, and red towers. They were like the purest red crystals, shining with a soul-stealing light. The temperature here was just right, a few dozen degrees higher than the temperature above the cave. Yan Ziyuan even felt a little hot. Chapter 1062. The place they were in just happened to be a smooth and spacious area, and not far away, there was a row of blood-red mountain peaks. Yan Ziyuan only felt a chill run down her spine. If they had slid a few more meters, they would have directly crashed into the sharp mountain peaks. The consequences would have been unimaginable. And above them there was a pitch-black cave entrance. They had fallen from there and both of them knew how steep it was. So they also knew that they would definitely not be able to climb up. And right in front of them there was another cave entrance. What was different from the previous cave entrance was that this one was very bright, so bright that it was somewhat dazzling. Inside the cave, there was a sparkling red passageway with countless twists and turns, making it impossible to see the end. All of this was a masterpiece of nature, and one couldn't help but gasp in amazement. Yifeng walked in front, and Yan Ziyuan followed behind. The two of them walked very carefully. Yifeng would sometimes knock on the cave wall, and casually throw a crystal in front of them. After confirming that there were no problems, he protected Yan Ziyuan as they walked forward. If they weren't trapped here at this time, Yan Ziyuan would definitely appreciate the uncanny workmanship of nature. Who would have thought that there would be such a warm and beautiful place a few thousand meters under the frozen snowfield? More importantly, there was actually plenty of oxygen here, so Yan Ziyuan didn't feel stuffy at all. Yan Ziyuan was still quite vigilant at first, obediently following behind Yifeng, and only used her curious eyes to look around at the red crystals. But after walking for a long distance and still nothing happened, she finally couldn't suppress the desire in her heart, and after obtaining Yifeng's permission, she touched the crystal cave wall. It was cold and smooth to the touch and it was very comfortable. Yan Ziyuan began to touch here and there, and Yifeng had always doted on Yan Ziyuan, so after confirming that there was no problem, he naturally let her do as she pleased. Of course he wouldn't let Yan Ziyuan be too far away from him. The more beautiful a place was, the more likely it was to be dangerous. This was his experience after living for thousands of years. Even though he was walking in front of Yan Ziyuan and didn't look back from beginning to end, no matter how fast or slow Yan Ziyuan walked, he always kept a distance of 3 meters from her, not an inch more or less. This distance would make her feel safe and less resistant to him. And when she was really in danger, he would be able to protect her in time and not let her get hurt again. It's so warm here. It would be great if Xian could come in too. Yan Ziyuan thought of Gu Xian, who was still starving in the ice and snow. Yifeng's back stiffened slightly. He didn't say anything. When Gu Xian saw his beloved fall into the ice crevice, he didn't even have the intention to follow her down. That kind of person was definitely not Ziyuan's man. If she married Gu Xian, it would definitely be a disaster in the future. But how could he stop it when the time came? Yifeng had a lot on his mind, but he didn't show it on his face. He continued to walk forward without saying a word. This place was beautiful, but it seemed to be filled with a kind of death aura. Other than the sound of their footsteps and the occasional conversation, there was no other sound. It was as silent as a tomb. If Yan Ziyuan was walking here alone, she would have been scared out of her wits. But now that Yifeng was by her side, she actually felt strangely at ease. It was as if as long as he was by her side, even if the sky fell, she wouldn't be afraid, because Yifeng would hold it up for her. From time to time, crystalline crystals would appear in this cave. They were of different shapes and shined with different lusters. Chapter 1063. Yan Ziyuan inadvertently looked forward and saw a piece of red crystal. It was as big as a person's palm and vaguely had the shape of a mermaid. Her heart skipped a beat. She ran over and picked it up. Just as she held the crystal in her hand, she suddenly heard a gust of wind above her head. Be careful. Before Yan Ziyuan could react, her body fell into someone's arms. That person spun quickly with her and waved his sleeve again. Pa. Boom. An object moved half a foot and crashed to the ground. 2 consecutive loud noises shook the cave, causing the ground beneath their feet to tremble. Yan Ziyuan opened her eyes in shock and found herself in Yifeng's arms. At the place where she was standing there was a huge crystal. That crystal was slightly slanted. Obviously it was due to Yifeng's palm. Yan Ziyuan's heart was beating fast. If Yifeng didn't move her away in time, she would have been slapped under the crystal and become a meat patty. Thank you? She murmured in his arms and forgot to push him away for a moment. His steady heartbeat was right next to her ear, making her heart beat faster. With me, you don't have to be polite. Yifeng let go of her and took a few steps back, still keeping a safe distance from her. Suddenly leaving his arms, Yan Ziyuan felt a little disappointed. She calmed down and looked at the big stone. Where did this stone fall from? Yifeng raised his head and looked at the ceiling. A hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. Although the cave wall above was crisscrossed with all kinds of crystals like fangs, there were no traces of it ever being broken. This big rock did not seem to have fallen from above. Then where did this big stone fall from? This big stone fell in a strange way. What was even stranger was that it just happened to block the passage they came from. Yifeng walked over to take a look. This big stone had already reached the top of the cave and had completely blocked their way. Unless he turned into his original body or a water snake, he would be able to swim out from the edge of this big stone. He raised his hand and pushed again, but the boulder didn't budge. It was as if it had grown on the ground in an instant. Yifeng frowned slightly. With his current strength, not to mention such a huge boulder, even if it was twice the size of this boulder, he would still be able to push it. But now it was as if it was cast iron on the ground. It didn't shake at all. In other words, their path was sealed and they could only move forward. We can't go back, right? Yan Ziyuan was nervous and couldn't help but ask. Don't worry, we'll find another way out. Yifeng comforted her. Yan Ziyuan looked ahead at the endless winding passageway and couldn't help but grab Yifeng's sleeve. I wonder if there's a way out in front. When she listened to those adventure stories, she felt that they were very exciting and hot-blooded. But when this kind of thing happened to her, she knew that the feeling of fear and trepidation was definitely not something an ordinary person could endure. Yifeng lowered his eyes and looked at her little hand that was holding his sleeve. His heart felt sour and warm. Many years ago, she also liked to hold his sleeve and relied on him for everything. His heart shook as he held her hand. Don't worry, we won't be unable to get out. If there were no accidents, Kirin should have already informed Ning Xuema and Han Shanyue. That Master Han Shanyue was someone who could change the world. As long as he rushed over to save them, there wouldn't be much of a problem. Chapter 1064. During this period of time, he just needed to protect Yan Ziyuan and not let anything happen to her. His voice had the power to calm people's hearts, and Yan Ziyuan's panicked heart finally calmed down. It was only at this moment that she realized she was still desperately pulling on Yifeng's sleeve. Her heart skipped a beat and she finally let go. As if she thought of something, she held the crystal in her hand and waved it in front of Yifeng. "Yifeng, what do you think this looks like?" Yifeng looked at her palm. He didn't have many romantic cells in his body, so he couldn't see what it was for a while. In his eyes, it was just a normal crystal. His attention was on her little hand. That little hand was red and swollen, and there were many frozen wounds on it. There were even some wounds that were still oozing blood. It was clear how much she had suffered along the way. Yifeng's heart ached. Without saying a word, he took out the bottle of medicine that was left with only a little bit left. He pulled her hand over and applied the precious ointment on her wound. When Yan Ziyuan saw the ointment, her hand couldn't help shrinking back. "Yifeng, don't apply this on me. This is life-saving medicine. This is just a small wound from frostbite. It's fine." Yifeng still applied the rest of the ointment on her. His fingers were slightly cold. When he held her hand and applied the ointment, Yan Ziyuan actually felt like there was an electric current on his hand. It went into her heart, and that kind of feeling was warm and sour. It made her eyes inexplicably warm. Yan Ziyuan's heart felt like someone had thrown a stone into the lake. It was very turbulent. She suddenly blurted out, "Were you really my older brother in your previous life?" Yifeng's fingers slightly paused and then he let go of her hand. Right now he didn't know what she was thinking when she broke the twin curse, so he didn't want to explain too much to her. He only gave a faint sound. How good would it be if he wasn't her older brother? Otherwise, she would have definitely fallen in love with him in her previous life. Yan Ziyuan's heart suddenly had this thought that scared her. How could he have such thoughts? Could it be that she had fallen for Yifeng? No, this is impossible. She loved Gu Ziyan and was about to marry Gu Ziyan. She couldn't let her imagination run wild. Otherwise, how would she be any different from the promiscuous women she usually despised? She calmly took a few steps back and smiled. "Then you should be my brother from now on. I will treat you as my real brother." Yifeng, a hint of sadness flashed through his eyes. It turned out that no matter if it was in the previous life or this life, he could only be her brother. However, this was also good. Back then he had gambled on his fate with Yiyu. It was impossible for him and her to be together. This was also good. He turned around and said faintly, "Let's go. We'll find a way to get out." He took the lead and walked forward. Yan Ziyuan walked a few steps behind him and walked side by side with him. She handed over the crystal in her palm. "Yifeng Gij, this is for you." Yifeng was a bit confused as he took the crystal. Yan Ziyuan then said, "Don't you think that this crystal looks a bit like a mermaid? I'll give it to you as a souvenir." Yifeng looked down at the crystal in his hand. After Yan Ziyuan's explanation, he finally felt that this crystal really did look like a mermaid. He slightly held the crystal in his hand. This was the first time Yan Ziyuan had given him something. Although she had casually picked it up, it was still a gift from her and it still had her body temperature. Chapter 1065. Yifeng carefully put away the crystal and faintly smiled. "Let's go." Yifeng actually smiled. He actually looked so good when he smiled. Yan Ziyuan's heart skipped a few beats, but she immediately shook her head. She threw all the distracting thoughts to the side and walked forward. Along the way she picked up a slender and round crystal. She said with a smile, "This crystal is not bad. It looks like a human. When we get back I'll use it to carve a person for Ziyan. He'll definitely like it." Yifeng's footsteps slightly paused. He did not reply, but the smile on his lips froze. "Brother Yifeng, do you think it's better to carve a standing figure or a sitting one on this stone? On this edge looks like a zither. Then carve him playing the zither. I have to carve it myself. Big brother Yifeng, will you help me?" It was as if she had suddenly been enlightened and found a way to get along with Yifeng. She kept calling him Big Brother Yifeng very naturally and intimately. Yifeng's face was slightly pale. He only replied with a single word, "I'll help." He would never refuse her requests. "Big Brother Yifeng, my hand has really healed. That medicine is really effective." Yan Ziyuan waved her small hand in front of him. That medicine was naturally very effective. In just a few moments, Yan Ziyuan's wounds began to scab over and the red swelling began to fade. Yifeng's face finally revealed a small smile as he gave an unsound. The two of them walked forward for a while and a narrow cave entrance appeared in front of them. Waves of heat rushed over them. After walking into the cave, Yan Ziyuan suddenly cried out in joy, "So beautiful!" The two of them suddenly opened up in front of them. There was a large and boundless cave with a fiery red river of lava flowing through it. On both sides of the lava river, there were layers of large crystal-like rocks. In the cracks of the large rocks, there were countless flowers blooming like stars. There were 7 or 8 different kinds of flowers that the two of them had never seen before. Swaying in the cave. Ice flame flower. Brother Yifeng, are there any ice flame flowers here? Yan Ziyuan's voice trembled. Yifeng's heart was also surging with emotions. His eyes fell on the fiery red rocks, where several large flowers were blooming side by side. We've finally found the flower of ice flame. The flowers were a faint blue color. They were as big as bowls and were translucent. They stood out from the rest of the flowers. Icy flame flower. This was the ice flame flower that they had been searching for with all their might. Yan Ziyuan's twin curse was about to be broken. Yifeng's fingers trembled slightly. He couldn't help but glance at Yan Ziyuan beside him. Her face was also full of joy. Xian's illness has finally been cured. Aya, we have to find a way to inform the people outside to let Xian in. Shuema said that the flowers have to be eaten immediately after being plucked. But the way in has already been blocked. Where is he going to come in? Yifeng's eyes dimmed. Her heart was only thinking about Gu Xian. If the twin curse was broken, she would still be like this. No matter if it was good or bad, there had to be a result. That's right, Brother Yifeng, do you have a way to contact the people outside? Yifeng slowly shook his head. We have been relying on Kirin to contact Miss Ning. Then what should we do? Wait. Yifeng only said one word. He believed that Ning Shuema and the others would come. Yan Ziyuan sighed. It seems like that's the only way. Chapter 1066. She simply found a place a little further away from the lava river and sat down. She took out the slender crystal from her arms and a sharp dagger for self-defense. She smiled and said, "Since I have nothing to do, I'll carve a small statue of him to pass the time." Yifeng. His fingers touched the mermaid-like crystal that she had just given him. He made up his mind and handed the mermaid crystal to her. "Ziyuan, can you help me carve this first?" This crystal originally had the shape of a mermaid, and it would look more like one with a little carving. And this was perhaps the only thing she could give him. In the future, even if he couldn't be by her side, this thing would be a little comforting. Yan Ziyuan was thinking about how to carve the crystal in her hand. She didn't raise her head when she heard his words, "I'll carve yours later." Yifeng slowly withdrew his hand. Yan Ziyuan seemed to have noticed something. She looked up at him and added, "If there's still time after carving this, I'll carve yours." Yifeng didn't say anything and put the mermaid crystal back into his arms. He lowered his head and was about to tell her to be careful not to cut her hand when suddenly he seemed to have sensed something. His face changed and his body swept away like smoke. He flew directly to Yan Ziyuan's side. Before she could react, he picked her up and quickly retreated. Yan Ziyuan was caught off guard. The crystal in her hand fell to the ground and broke into several pieces. Yan Ziyuan, she was held in Yifeng's arms and didn't react for a moment. When she reacted, she was already a few feet away in the passage. She was stunned for a moment and looked behind her. It was calm and peaceful there. Nothing had appeared. It was just as usual. There was no danger. Her eyes fell on the broken crystal. Her heart sank and anger surged up. She suddenly struggled in his arms. "Let go of me." However, Yifeng was still hugging her. His eyes were fixed on the lava river as if he did not hear anything. Yan Ziyuan was furious. Was this person purposely breaking the one she wanted to carve for Gu Xian because she didn't carve it for him first? She had always been a spoiled brat. At this moment, she was so angry that she slapped Yifeng without thinking. "Bastard, let go of me." Yifeng couldn't dodge in time, or perhaps he didn't even think of dodging. The slap landed squarely on his cheek, crisp and clear. She had used quite a bit of strength in that slap. Yifeng's head tilted from the force of the slap, and blood trickled down from the corner of his lips. He was startled and his arms loosened slightly. Yan Ziyuan finally broke free from his embrace and stood on the ground. Yan Ziyuan saw the blood trickling down the corner of his lips and stiffened for a moment. She didn't expect that he would be hit so hard. Her heart was beating wildly. She snorted, "Who told you to take advantage of me? I didn't expect you to be so petty." You actually broke that crystal of mine. Let me tell you, even if that's the case, I won't carve that for you. I won't ever. She was so angry that she wanted to say a few more harsh words. However, she inadvertently saw where she was originally standing. Her eyes widened. She was standing on a hard and uneven crystal slope. At this moment, there was a swamp in the crystal slope. All the large rocks in the surroundings seemed to be attracted and slid into the swamp. There wasn't even a sound as they were swallowed by the fiery red swamp. The large rock she was sitting on had long disappeared. It must have been swallowed by the swamp. Chapter 1067. So he was trying to save her, and not because he was jealous of Guzian. Her heart felt like it was being pricked by a needle. I'm sorry. She was about to say a few words of apology, but her eyes inadvertently looked inside, and her face suddenly changed. That fiery red swamp was still rapidly expanding. It seemed like it was going to merge with the lava river. The crystals and flowers on the shore were all swallowed by the swamp, and they could no longer be seen. Now, they were moving closer to the few ice flame flowers on the shore. Heavens, these flowers were hard to find. If they were swallowed, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens if they wanted to find other flowers. Heavens, ice flame flowers. Yan Ziyuan screamed. Don't move, I'll go pick the flowers. Yifeng quickly instructed her. His body moved, and like a bolt of lightning, he flew towards the few ice flame flowers. You. Be careful. Yan Ziyuan could not help but call out. Yifeng's figure slightly paused, and he looked back with a gentle smile. I know, don't be afraid. Yan Ziyuan only saw Yifeng's figure flash, and he flew above the ice flame flowers. The moment he plucked the flowers, a huge fire dragon covered in dark magma patterns instantly jumped out. Yan Ziyuan instantly opened her eyes wide. What kind of monster was this? Dragon. No, this monster had a dragon's head, but its body was like a giant lizard. It looked as big as a house and was abnormally fierce. Its pair of flaming eyes stared fiercely at Yifeng, and it raised its head and let out a low roar. The sound it emitted was very strange, and Yan Ziyuan only heard a series of beastly snoring sounds. On the other hand, Yifeng's face flushed red for a moment before turning slightly pale. This was the legendary magma fire dragon. Earth rank level 9. It was said that this beast could already summon the wind and rain, move mountains and fill seas. As long as it broke through Earth rank level 9 and entered Heaven rank level 1, it could turn into a golden dragon and soar above the 9 heavens. This beast was almost as famous as the Qiongqi swan and eye, and other ancient beasts. No one dared to provoke it. Once it pestered you, it would not rest until you were dead. Even if Yifeng was at his peak, he might not be able to defeat it, not to mention that he had already used up more than half of his telekinesis. In this state, he was even less of a match for it. The magma dragon's roar just now was a special kind of sound wave. Humans could not hear it clearly, but as Sharkman he could receive this kind of sound wave. The lethality of that sound wave was not small, shaking until the blood in his entire body churned. The sound waves emitted by the magma dragon were obviously a warning. It was asking him for the 3 ice flame flowers. Yifeng took a step back and put the 3 ice flame flowers into his bosom. This flower was hard to come by, so he definitely couldn't give it to this dragon. Magma dragon understood the meaning of Yifeng's body movements and immediately became furious. With another long roar, it paused and rushed towards Yifeng with countless flames and hot winds. If Yifeng escaped by himself with his speed, he might be able to escape from the magma dragon's pursuit. However, his and Yan Ziyuan's escape route had been blocked by the large rock that appeared out of nowhere, so he could only escape to the dark passage on the other side of the magma river. But now that he had Yan Ziyuan by his side, he couldn't bring her across the magma river. And once he escaped into the passage where Yan Ziyuan was, the magma dragon would definitely chase after him. Then Yan Ziyuan would be in great danger. So he could only fight with all his might, and in the blink of an eye, he fought with the magma dragon until the sky turned dark. Chapter 1068. One man and one dragon, one water and one fire. Their attributes just so happened to counter each other. Although the magma dragon was powerful, its attributes were restrained by Yifeng's attributes. Therefore, it was unable to tear apart this merman who dared to challenge its majesty. But Yifeng was an Earth rank level 7 after all, and there was a great disparity between his strength and the magma dragon's. Every time the magma dragon spat out a huge tongue of fire at him, although he desperately used a water column to extinguish it, He was still shaken to the point that the blood in his chest kept churning, and he almost vomited. He gritted his teeth and fought. He had no way out now, he could only fight. He couldn't let the magma dragon hurt Yan Ziyuan, so when he retreated in the other direction, deeper and deeper into the magma river, and the magma river was still being swallowed by the swamp. Fiery red magma emerged from the swamp, swallowing and spitting out flames. Yi Feng's figure flew as if he was flying, and spun around the crystals that were about to fall. Several times he almost stepped on empty air and was swallowed by the fiery red swamp. Yan Ziyuan was scared out of her wits. She saw Yi Feng getting closer and closer to the magma river, so nervous that her heart almost jumped out. Yi Feng, come here. Don't retreat anymore. She saw Yi Feng almost stepping on the churning magma and was scared out of her wits. Finally she couldn't help but scream. Now, in this whole place only the tunnel Yan Ziyuan was in was relatively safe. Her scream didn't call Yi Feng, but it made the magma dragon look in her direction, and then, a big fireball flew towards her face. Ziyuan, be careful. Yi Feng yelled as he flew over without a care for anything else. He actually arrived before the fireball and blocked in front of Yan Ziyuan. Originally, when he fought with the dragon, he used guerrilla tactics and didn't confront the dragon directly. Firstly, he wanted to avoid its edge, and secondly, he wanted to feel out the dragon's style. But at this moment, in order to protect Yan Ziyuan behind him, he could no longer dodge and could only face the attack head-on. He waved his hand and set up 2 water walls in front of him to block the fireball. Boom! 2 deafening explosions rang out. The fireball hit the water wall, making an earth-shattering sound. In any case, the fireball was extinguished, and the 2 water walls that Yi Feng set up were also broken. Yi Feng was also shaken to the point that his face turned pale. A mouthful of blood surged up his throat, but he forcefully swallowed it back down. Ziyuan, step back, he shouted. Yan Ziyuan also knew that she couldn't help it this time. She gritted her teeth and took a few steps back, but her eyes were fixed on Yi Feng. She couldn't help but say, "You, be careful." Understood. Yi Feng's reply was very light, but his heart was slightly warm. Woo-la-la-la woo-ka-ka-ka. The magma dragon suddenly made a series of long and short sounds. Yan Ziyuan didn't understand the beast language and only felt that the sound was a little harsh, but she didn't feel anything else. But Yi Feng's face changed. He understood the beast language and he already heard the ruthless words that the magma dragon said, "Don't even think about running away. This divine beast will completely turn your bones into ashes and scatter your souls, so that you won't be able to reincarnate." Yi Feng knew that the magma dragon in front of him had this ability. If he was defeated, the 2 of them would fall into the hands of the magma dragon, and their souls would be scattered. It didn't matter if Yi Feng died, Sharkman didn't have a chance to reincarnate, but Yan Ziyuan did. He definitely couldn't let Yan Ziyuan fall into that state. So he could only win and not fail. Chapter 1069. He took a deep breath and pearl-like blood beads suddenly appeared on his 10 fingers. They moved rapidly in the air as he chanted. In the blink of an eye, a blood talisman was formed in the air. The blood talisman was beautiful, but it had an ominous aura. The blood talisman spun in the air and went directly into Yi Feng's body. Yi Feng's face turned pale and then red. At this moment, it was as if he was injected with chicken blood. His power doubled in an instant. His pair of blue eyes were now glowing red. He once again engaged in a fierce battle with the lava dragon. Although Yan Ziyuan's kung fu was not high, she could still see the general pattern. She was surprised to find that Yi Feng, who had already fallen into a disadvantageous position, seemed to have been injected with great vitality in an instant. His whole body was in high spirits, and the water column and ice blades he shot out were getting bigger and sharper, forcing the magma dragon to retreat step by step. The magma dragon was naturally unwilling to give up and fought back with all its might. A man and a dragon fought together, dazzling the onlookers. They were fighting so fiercely that the whole cave was shaking and rumbling. Countless crystals fell down and melted in the magma. The magma surged and overflowed, like a tongue of fire wantonly engulfing the entire cave. Yan Ziyuan could not help but take a few steps back, but she was shaken to the point where she could not stand. The whole scene was like the end of the world. The beautiful crystal cave had now become a purgatory on earth. It was a sea of fire, and the temperature in the air was rising sharply. In the blink of an eye, it had risen to an unbearable level. Yan Ziyuan could no longer calm down and watch the fight. She began to dodge the falling crystals. The high temperature made her vision hazy. The water in her body seemed to have evaporated and she became weak. She tried her best to retreat, but the oxygen in the air seemed to be getting less and less. Her limbs were weak and her mind was in a daze. Finally, she collapsed to the ground. Her head was buzzing and her vision turned black. The darkness was spreading rapidly. A huge crystal above her head began to shake because of the fight. It was on the verge of falling down. Before she fainted, she saw the lava dragon collapse and Yi Feng arrive, bathed in blood. Yan Ziyuan slowly regained consciousness. She slowly opened her eyes. There was absolute darkness in front of him. He couldn't even see his own fingers. No matter how hard she blinked, it was useless. Could it be that she was blind? A huge wave of panic swept over her. She clawed around with both hands, trying to grab something to calm the panic in her heart. His entire body was burning and the pain was intense. He must have been accidentally scratched by the falling crystal. His calf seemed to be fractured. Every time he moved, he felt a piercing pain. She tried to move but found that her body seemed to be stuck somewhere and she couldn't move at all. He was buried alive. What about Yi Feng? What about Yi Feng? She was so flustered that she couldn't help but call out, Yi Feng? The moment she spoke, she felt that her voice was extremely hoarse and her throat was burning with pain. No one responded. Yi Feng, where are you? Only her own voice was still echoing in the air. Yi Feng, you're here, right? Don't scare me. Her voice even sounded like she was about to cry. The surroundings were dead silent. It was so quiet that she could hear her own heartbeat. It was as if she was alone in a huge empty tomb. Chapter 1070. Her surroundings were deathly silent. It was so quiet that she could hear her own heartbeat. It was as if she was alone in a huge and empty tomb. No matter how much she cried and screamed, no one answered. Could it be that Yi Feng was dead? Yan Ziyuan could only move her hands in a small area. She frantically groped around. She was surrounded by large stones. Some were sharp, some were round, and some were squeezed around her. She was stuck in the gap between the stones and could not move at all. At this time she finally understood that she was really buried underground. The shadow of death hung above her head. Yi Feng, Yi Feng, Yi Feng, where are you? The great fear made Yan Ziyuan's voice choke with sobs. It was somewhat shrill and mournful. Could it be that she was buried here by herself? Was Yi Feng already dead? No. Her hands frantically groped around. Yi Feng, answer me. Don't ignore me. I'm scared. I'm telling you I'm scared. Suddenly, there was the sound of stones crashing around her. A hand gently held her frantic and trembling hand. She was startled. Then, like a drowning person, she tried to hold on to a piece of driftwood. Yi Feng? Is it you? That hand held her again. Although the strength was light, it was firm. A hoarse voice came, but it was calm as usual. Don't be scared. It's me. It was Yi Feng. He was still alive. Yan Ziyuan's heart, which had been hanging in the air for a long time, finally calmed down a little. Tears flowed out of her eyes. She held his hand tightly as if she had finally found someone to rely on. She felt wronged and frightened at the same time. Are we buried alive? How are you? Yi Feng's wet palm gently patted her small hand. I'm fine. His hand was cold and wet. Yan Ziyuan became nervous again. She wanted to touch his hand. Why is your hand so wet? Is it blood? Is it blood? Are you injured? Is it serious? Is it serious? She and Yi Feng were separated by a few rocks. Yi Feng's hand was forcibly squeezed through the cracks. She couldn't see Yi Feng's expression clearly and couldn't check his injuries. Her heart was in her throat again. Yi Feng slowly withdrew his hand and said indifferently, No, this is magma dragon's blood. Yi Feng's voice was still calm, and his breathing was also very stable. It didn't seem like he was injured. Yan Ziyuan finally breathed a sigh of relief. She placed her hand back into Yi Feng's. Yi Feng, can you hold my hand? I'm scared. Her voice was weak and tentative. It sounded like she would break down if Yi Feng rejected her. However, deep in her heart, she firmly believed that Yi Feng would not reject her. Yi Feng had never rejected any of her requests. Even if it was an unreasonable request, Yi Feng would do it for her without saying a word. Yi Feng gently held her hand, making Yan Ziyuan feel a lot more at ease. However, her body was still trembling slightly. Yi Feng held her hand a little harder and said in a coaxing voice, Ziyuan, don't be afraid. I'm here. Don't be afraid, I'm here. When the monster opened its mouth, he hugged her and gently covered her eyes. He said softly, Don't be afraid, I'm here." The wind and snow were merciless. When the sled was about to collapse, he patted her and used his body to warm her. He comforted her, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." Now they were buried under rocks nearly 10,000 meters deep in the ice field. No one knew that when she was struggling in pain, it was his calm voice that gave her the courage to live. Chapter 1071. This sentence seemed to have a magical power. Every time Yi Feng said it, Yan Ziyuan would feel inexplicably at ease. Every time she was in danger and scared, it was Yi Feng who saved her time and time again, comforting her time and time again. "Yi Feng, why are you always so good to me? But I already have Zian. I will end up with Zian in the end. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? How am I going to repay your love? Yi Feng, I wish I could split myself in two." Yan Ziyuan's tears flowed out of her eyes like pearls from a broken necklace. They fell one by one, wetting her cheeks and falling onto the rocks beside her, slowly disappearing. One of the tears seemed to fall onto Yi Feng's hand. He immediately pulled it back as if he had been scalded. Yan Ziyuan was shocked. She fumbled around and grabbed his hand. Her voice sounded like she had been greatly wronged. "Yi Feng." Yi Feng's hand fumbled around to wipe away Yan Ziyuan's tears. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't wipe them all away. He sighed and said in a slightly hoarse voice, "See? Don't cry. I'm fine. I won't let anything happen to you." He suddenly coughed. Although he tried his best to suppress it, he couldn't stop for a while. Yan Ziyuan opened her eyes wide. She wanted to see Yi Feng's condition clearly, but it was still pitch black. Yi Feng, what's wrong with you? You are seriously injured, aren't you? Does it hurt? Why can't you stop coughing?" Her tears seemed like they were about to gush out again. Yi Feng had already stopped coughing. His voice sounded weak, but this weakness disappeared in an instant. He said lightly, "I'm fine. It's just a flesh wound. I accidentally breathed in the dust that floated down just now, so I coughed a few times." "Dust? Maybe so." Yan Ziyuan's chaotic mind calmed down a little. She held Yi Feng's hand tightly as if she wanted to draw courage from it. She held his hand, not daring to let go. She could feel that Yi Feng was really by her side. In this dark underground she was not alone. Yi Feng was with her. She felt that her chest was a little stuffy, and the huge rock that was pressing down on her made it hard for her to breathe. She really wanted to push the big rock away, but she didn't have the strength. "Yi Feng, will we die here?" "No, Ziyun, you have to hold on. You can do it." Yi Feng's voice sounded a little rushed. But, this is several thousand feet underground. You are also trapped. We are buried here. How can we get out?" Yan Ziyuan's voice was filled with helplessness. "Master Han and Miss Ning will come. Ziyun, don't be discouraged." This space was very small and it was sealed by rocks. After a while the oxygen began to run out. Yan Ziyuan gradually felt cold. The stuffy feeling in her chest became more and more intense. Her head also felt a little dizzy, as if she would fall asleep in the next second. She muttered softly, "Yi Feng? I'm so sleepy." Yi Feng suddenly tightened his grip on her hand. "Ziyun, you can't sleep." Yan Ziyuan woke up for a moment. "I don't want to sleep either, but I'm really sleepy. Can I sleep for a while?" Yi Feng patted her hand. His usually calm voice finally had a trace of panic. He finally became talkative. "Ziyun, you can't sleep. If you sleep, you won't be able to wake up. Think about your family. They are waiting for you at home. Your husband is still outside the cave." Chapter 1072. Yi Feng seemed to be in pain when he said the last sentence, but it was replaced by anxiety in an instant. "Ziyun, wake up." Yes, Ziyun was still waiting for her. Yan Ziyun forced herself to be awake and repeated over and over again, "Father is still waiting for me. Ziyun is still waiting for me. I can't sleep, I can't sleep." Her voice gradually became softer. She suddenly felt a sharp pain in her finger, which made her sober for a moment. She seemed to have suddenly remembered something. That magma dragon? Dead. Yi Feng answered succinctly. Yan Ziyuan breathed a sigh of relief. Then what about the ice flame flower? It's with me. Yan Ziyuan breathed a sigh of relief again, but she was still worried about another thing. If we pluck it in advance, will it lose its effect? Ning Xuema once said that after plucking the flower, it must be consumed within 2 hours for it to be effective. No. I have a way to keep it fresh. Yi Feng was silent for a moment and answered. Yan Ziyuan seemed to have sensed something. Guilt welled up in her heart and she didn't say anything. Her dizziness became worse, and her eyes wanted to close again. Ziyuan, you can't sleep. Yi Feng held her hand tightly again. Yan Ziyuan forced herself to be awake. Yes, I won't sleep. I won't sleep. Her voice gradually became softer, suddenly became louder, and then gradually became softer again. Again and again it could be seen that Yan Ziyuan was fighting against sleepiness. However, her voice became softer and finally, it was close to a murmur. The lack of oxygen for a long time made her a little confused. The reason why she was still holding on was that there was a trace of faith in her heart supporting her. Yi Feng kept shaking her hand. Ziyuan, wake up. Hold on a little longer. Xuema and the others will arrive soon and save you. Yan Ziyuan's consciousness was almost blurred. She only heard half of Yi Feng's words. Suddenly, she trembled and became clear-headed for a moment. We have to go out together. Yi Feng paused for a moment, then softly replied, okay. Yan Ziyuan seemed to have become delirious. She just subconsciously repeated, go out together. Go out together. Yi Feng, we have to go out together. Yi Feng grabbed her hand and suddenly exerted force. Pain swept through her body in a flash. Yan Ziyuan suddenly woke up. Yi Feng, what are you doing? Ziyuan, let me sing a song for you. Don't sleep anymore, okay? Yi Feng wanted to sing? She had never heard shark men sing before. It must be beautiful, right? Yan Ziyuan shook her head and tried to wake herself up. Okay, I won't sleep. Woo-woo, the sea breeze blows, walala, the waves roll, I pull the sea breeze to play on the swing. Yi Feng's voice had the tranquility and beauty of the deep sea. It seemed to resonate with the surrounding stone walls. His voice echoed in this small space, with a sense of emptiness and loneliness. Yan Ziyuan only felt her heart ache. Countless images flashed through her mind. The background was dark blue. She seemed to see an indescribably beautiful mermaid singing in the deep sea, which strangely overlapped with Yi Feng's voice and echoed. Just as she was about to touch it, these images scattered like shooting stars, and she could no longer find any trace of it. Yan Ziyuan couldn't help but hum along, woo, the sea breeze blows, walala, the waves roll, I pull the sea breeze to play on the swing. After an unknown period of time, there was suddenly a small sound above her head. Chapter 1073. After an unknown amount of time, there was a sudden strange sound from above. Yan Ziyuan was already in a semi-conscious state. Her hand was held again, but this time the strength was much lighter. Ziyuan, wake up. Xuema and the others are here. Xuema and the others are here? Yan Ziyuan shook her head and opened her eyes, but they were still pitch black. There was nothing out of the ordinary. She said in a daze, Yi Feng, you must be hallucinating. Suddenly there was another muffled sound from above. It sounded like someone was moving rocks. This time Yan Ziyuan heard it too. She forced herself to stay awake and shook Yi Feng's hand excitedly. Yi Feng, they're here. They're here to save us. Then she shouted, Xuema, we're here. She tried her best, but her voice was still as soft as a mosquito's. The muffled sound from above suddenly stopped. Yan Ziyuan seemed to hear a clear voice. Oh my god, Guru, they're really buried underground. Quickly move these rocks away. Let's save them quickly. There seemed to be fewer and fewer rocks above, and there was more and more oxygen. Because of the large amount of oxygen entering her lungs, she felt a slight swelling pain. Her dizzy mind gradually cleared up. Finally, a ray of light shone in, dispelling the lonely darkness. Then the light became brighter and brighter. Yan Ziyuan closed her eyes in discomfort. When she opened them again, she saw Ning Xuema's bright eyes. Ziyuan, are you okay? Yan Ziyuan looked at Ning Xuema's delicate face and suddenly felt like a lifetime had passed. Was she saved? She didn't know how long she had been buried underground. It had been so long that she thought she was going to die, but she was suddenly saved. She felt like she was in a trance. The next second she was ecstatic at being saved. At this moment she almost wanted to cry. She suddenly turned her head. Her delicate face was full of surprise. Yi Feng, we. Yan Ziyuan's voice stopped abruptly. She finally saw Yi Feng's hand clearly. She could only see one of his arms. That arm was badly mangled and stuck between the cracks of the stone. Only one hand was still intact, but it was also pale and motionless. Yan Ziyuan screamed and then desperately tried to dig at the rocks around the arm. Yi Feng? Yi Feng, answer me. There was no reply. Yi Feng, we're saved. Can you answer me? Yan Ziyuan's heart almost jumped out of her chest. She screamed as she tried to dig out the stones. I'll get you out." The lower half of her body was still stuck in the crack of the stone. This sudden turn of the body caused her unbearable pain, but she was completely unaware of it. Only a huge panic filled her heart. It can't be, Yi Feng must have fainted, they were saved. When Ning Xuema saw the color of Yi Feng's fingers, her heart sank to the bottom. She quickly moved away a few more crystals. Then she jumped down and landed beside Yan Ziyuan. She then felt the pulse of that hand. There was no pulse. Yi Feng, Ning Xuema's face was pale. She quickly dug out the stones that had almost buried Yi Feng. The wounds on Yan Ziyuan's hands split open and soon dyed the rocks red. She seemed to not feel it. Her body trembled violently and her face was pale. Yi Feng, answer me." No one answered. Yan Ziyuan's voice was trembling. "Yi Feng, don't scare me." Chapter 1074. Shunjuli suddenly appeared beside Ning Xuema and pulled her up. With a wave of his hand, a gust of wind blew past. The rocks in front of Yan Ziyuan suddenly trembled and cracks spread all over the rocks. With a gentle blow of the wind, the rocks silently shattered into thousands of pieces and fell down like rain. Yi Feng's figure was finally fully revealed in the fragmented stone foam curtain. He lay quietly in a large pool of blood. His clothes were tattered and his body was covered with hideous wounds. There was not a single piece of undamaged skin. His blood seemed to have long dried up, leaving behind streaks of dried blood. His eyes were tightly shut and his face was as pale as snow. He did not move at all. Yan Ziyuan was petrified. After a while she slowly walked over step by step and pushed Yi Feng's body. Her voice trembled as she said, "Wake up, we are saved." Yi Feng still did not move. Yan Ziyuan was naturally unwilling to give up and pushed him again. "Yi Feng, don't scare me. Wake up, wake up." No matter how she pushed, Yi Feng did not move. He lay there quietly with his eyes closed and his long eyelashes drooping. It was as if he had fallen asleep. Yan Ziyuan's hands and feet were inexplicably trembling. They were extremely cold. Her heart felt as if it was suspended above an ice abyss and would fall at any moment. She suddenly turned her pleading gaze to Ning Xuema. "Xuema, he fainted, right? He was just talking to me and singing for me. He must be too tired and has fainted, right? Can you wake him up? Once he wakes up we can go out." Ning Xuema's face became even paler. She did not give up and checked Yi Feng's pulse, then his neck. She lifted his eyelids and looked at his pupils. Her fingers were also trembling. Yi Feng did not have a heartbeat, no pulse, and his pupils were dilated. All the signs pointed to one thing. Yi Feng was already dead. She was still too late. She had rushed here with all her might, but it was still too late. She suddenly turned around and grabbed Shunjuli's hand tightly. "Guru, you have a way, right?" Her gaze was like fire, carrying a final glimmer of hope. Shunjuli's heart sank. He held her waist tightly and shook his head slightly. If it was an ordinary person, even if they died, he could go to the underworld to capture their soul and revive them. However, Yi Feng was Sharkmen, and Sharkmen only lived for one lifetime. Their souls did not return to hell. Once Sharkmen died, their souls would automatically disperse and transform into the sea breeze. Even the Almighty couldn't do anything about it. She could only watch helplessly as another friend of hers left her. Although she had experienced many life and death situations, at this moment her heart was in great pain. Yi Feng had actually died just like that. He was afraid that he would die with regret in his heart. He didn't even see what Yan Ziyuan looked like when she broke the twin curse. How could this be? Gu Ziyan, the main culprit, was still alive and kicking, while Yi Feng, such a good Yi Feng, had died an unnatural death here. Ning Xuema felt a fiery rage burning in her heart. She clenched her fists tightly and didn't say a word. Yan Ziyuan looked from one to the other. The more she looked, the more frightened and flustered she became. He can't wake up now? You're a divine doctor. You must have a way, right? Divine doctors can't save the dead. Ning Xuema blurted out with an inexplicable anger. Yi Feng is already dead. Chapter 1075. Yan Ziyuan suddenly opened her eyes wide and her body swayed. She shook her head desperately and said in a shrill voice, "I don't believe it, I don't believe it. He can't be dead. He must have just fainted. He was just talking to me, telling me not to be afraid and saying that he wanted to go out with me." She reached out her hand and covered some of the wounds on Yifeng's body that were still bleeding. Her other hand searched Yifeng's body for something. Ointment, ointment? So many wounds, Yifeng must be in a lot of pain. I need to apply ointment quickly. Ning Xuema. She didn't know what to say for a moment. Yan Ziyuan found a small red bottle on Yifeng's body. Her eyes lit up and she hurriedly opened it, only to find that the medicine in the small bottle had already been used up. Her tears finally fell. Xuema, what should we do? We've used up all the medicine. What should we do? What should we do? She was like a lost child who had been abandoned. Her whole body was trembling and tears stained her eyelashes. She suddenly grabbed Ning Xuema's hand again. Xuema, you must have more medicine, right? Can you give me another bottle? His wounds are still bleeding. He must have fainted after losing so much blood. It'll be fine if we stop the bleeding. Your medicine is very good at stopping bleeding. Give me another bottle. Give me another bottle. She anxiously pulled Ning Xuema's hand and knelt down. I want to apply medicine for him. Seeing Yan Ziyuan like this, Ning Xuema's fingers clenched tightly. Although she tried to sound calm, there was a slight tremor in her voice. Ziyuan, it's useless. Yifeng is already dead. No matter how good the medicine was, it wouldn't have the effect of bringing the dead back to life. Yan Ziyuan stared blankly at Ning Xuema, as if she didn't understand her words or refused to understand. She was stunned for a moment and shook her head violently. No, of course not. How could Yifeng die? He's so powerful that even Magma Dragon was defeated by him. Shinjiuli suddenly said, Magma Dragon is at Earth rank level 9, and Yifeng is only at level 7. He used the weapon dismemberment technique. His cold voice resounded in the narrow space, but it was exceptionally clear. It also awakens Yan Ziyuan's somewhat confused mind like the morning bell and evening drum. Dismemberment by force? Yan Ziyuan raised her head with tears in her eyes and asked subconsciously, What do you mean? Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. Her gaze fell on Yifeng. Yifeng's blood had almost dried up, and his fingers were stiff. Sure enough, it was the symptom of dismemberment. She was a smart person. Previously, when she and the Almighty entered the collapsed cave, they found the corpse of a magma dragon. Naturally, she knew how powerful this magma dragon was. She thought that Yifeng and Yan Ziyuan were killed by this magma dragon. She almost cut open the magma dragon's stomach. Later, when she calmed down and checked the magma dragon's injuries, she saw that its body was full of wounds. It was obviously killed by someone. At that time, Ning Xuema was still wondering how Yifeng's kung fu had improved so much. So that was why. It turned out that he used the weapon dismemberment technique. Yifeng wanted to see Yan Ziyuan break the twin life curse. He had been enduring all kinds of injustice just to see Yan Ziyuan return to normal. These few days he must have been dreaming of finding the ice flame flower and seeing her eat it. If it wasn't a critical moment, he wouldn't have chosen this path. How desperate was he when he used the weapon dismemberment technique? How helpless was he? Ning Xuema's heart was blocked by a hard knot. Chapter 1076. Ning Xuema's gaze fell on Yan Ziyuan. She couldn't help but share some knowledge with her. Execution can double a person's psychokinesis for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. But once the time limit is over, the person will completely disappear from this world. That is to say, Yifeng's soul has already dissipated half an hour ago. After saying the last sentence, she finally couldn't continue. Yan Ziyuan was stunned. The scene of Yifeng fighting with Magma Dragon flashed through her mind. Her body trembled slightly. Yifeng. Yifeng. How could it be? How could it be? No, it can't be. It can't be like this, she suddenly screamed. No. No. You must have seen wrongly. How could his soul dissipate? He was clearly talking to me and even singing for me. Just now when you guys came, he even reminded me that I was saved. How could it be half an hour ago? You must be lying to me. I don't believe it. Ning Xuema. Her heart became even heavier and more stifled. Yifeng should have died the moment Magma Dragon died. But his soul had been holding on. He kept talking to Yan Ziyuan until the rescue team arrived. Finally, he couldn't hold on anymore. Just how strong was his obsession? Xian, how lucky you are to have Yifeng's love. How unlucky you are to have mistaken a fisheye for a pearl. For Gu Xian, you hurt Yifeng who loved you for 2 lifetimes. Although there wasn't much logic in love, and although Ning Xuema knew that Yan Ziyuan was affected by the twin life curse, she still felt bad for Yifeng. Ning Xuema couldn't help but sneer. Because he was worried about you. He was afraid that you would be lonely and afraid that you would be scared. Yan Ziyuan's face turned pale. She felt like there was a row of steel needles piercing her heart. Her heart tightened into a ball and seemed to be convulsing in pain. For the first time in her life, her heart hurt so much. When she heard that Gu Ziyan's life was in danger at the wedding, she didn't feel so much pain. Yan Ziyuan sat there paralyzed. Her pretty face was full of pain and confusion. How could it be? Her gaze fell on Yifeng. The 3 flowers of ice flames were blooming beautifully in the pool of Sharkman's blood. They were nourished by the blood. Not only did they not wither, but they also became more crystal clear. Finally, Yan's eyes to the world. And she looked at it. Her hand was trembling, she almost couldn't hold it, and her fingertips, she was pale. Her heart hurt. Her heart was so painful. It was so painful it was like it was being cut inch by inch. If, as Yifeng's to look, was Xiao. Yifeng's to snatch the flowers when the swamp appeared, he wouldn't have died. The flowers were the main culprit. She wanted to destroy them. She wanted to crush the flowers of ice flames with her fingers. Ning Xuema was quick. She tapped on Yan Ziyuan's wrist. Yan Ziyuan's wrist went numb. Her reaction was slow, so Ning Xuema easily snatched the flowers from her hand. The flowers can't be destroyed. Ning Xuema spat out a few words. The flowers were exchanged with Yifeng's life. They hadn't been used yet. Yan Ziyuan sat on the ground. She finally reacted and murmured, "Yes, the flowers can't be destroyed. Ziyan still needs them to save his life. Now that I have the flowers, I should be happy, I should be happy." She seemed to be trying to hypnotize herself. I should be happy. Chapter 1077. Yan Ziyuan staggered to her feet and tidied up her messy hair. I should be happy. She staggered again and squatted down. But why does my heart hurt so much? I didn't feel this much pain when Ziyan was dying. What? Ziyan? Yes, he was the real culprit. There seemed to be a fire burning in Ning Xuema's heart. With a bang sound it sprang up. She used the sensing technique to contact Kiran. Kiran's anxious voice immediately came through. Master, how is it? Is Yan Ziyuan still alive? Ning Xuema said coldly, "Little apple, kick that scumbag down." Kiran had long disliked that scumbag, so she agreed very quickly. Yes, master. Gu Ziyan was waiting anxiously on top. Suddenly he saw Kiran striding over with an unfriendly aura. He immediately took a step back. What's wrong? You contacted. Before he could finish his words, the little Qilin had already kicked him down the ice crack. Go down and take a look yourself. Gu Ziyan screamed as he rolled down the cliff. After he landed, his face was pale. He was so scared and in pain that he couldn't stand up. When he came back to his senses, he saw Ning Xuema standing beside him with a cold face. She was holding 3 beautiful flowers in her hand. You found the flower of ice flame? He was about to reach out to take it when he suddenly felt his arm go numb. Then he froze there, unable to move. He opened his eyes wide in fear. He wanted to shout for help, but he found that he couldn't make a sound. Ning Xuema ignored him. She waved her hand and formed a wooden blade. She directly cut Gu Ziyan's arm. Blood instantly gushed out and dripped onto the flower of ice flame. Ning Xuema patiently waited for each petal to drink the blood before she turned and left. Speaking of which, it was strange. The petals were clearly stained with blood, but after a short while the blood had seeped through and disappeared. The petals still looked fresh and clean. Ning Xuema handed the flower of ice flame to Yan Ziyuan and said calmly, "Ziyuan, eat this flower." Yan Ziyuan was stunned. She muttered, "Why are you giving it to me? Isn't Ziyan sick?" Ning Xuema looked at her. "The one who's sick is not him, it's you. Gu Ziyan put the twin curse on you. Only this flower can cure it." Yan Ziyuan looked even more confused. Twin curse? That's right. You'll understand everything after you eat this flower of yours. When the time comes, what you choose to do will be up to you. Ning Xuema said. Yifeng once wanted a result. He couldn't see it now, but the flower that he risked his life to get should still work. It could be considered as a comfort to Yifeng. Yan Ziyuan took a step back. Her gaze fell on the flower, and then she slowly turned to look at Gu Ziyan. Gu Ziyan's face changed when he heard Ning Xuema's words. He was as pale as death. He was fooled. It turned out that they came to understand Yan Ziyuan's twin curse. He wanted to tell Yan Ziyuan not to eat it, but Ning Xuema sealed his acupoints. He couldn't say a word. He could only watch as Yan Ziyuan slowly reached out and took the 3 flowers. Then she slowly lowered her head and ate the flower of ice flame. It's over. Gu Ziyan couldn't stand any more. He sat on the ground with a plop. Ning Xuema felt a moment of regret when she handed the flower to Yan Ziyuan. Once Yan Ziyuan broke the twin curse, recovered her memories and saw Yi Feng die for her, what would she do? Chapter 1078. When Ning Xuema handed the flower to Yan Ziyuan, she had a moment of regret. Once Yan Ziyuan broke the twin life curse and recovered her memories, what would she do if she saw that Yi Feng had died for her? But she immediately made up her mind and handed the flower to Yan Ziyuan. She definitely couldn't let Yi Feng die in vain. She couldn't let Yan Ziyuan marry that scumbag. Seeing Yan Ziyuan slowly swallow the ice flame flower, she suddenly felt a sense of nervousness. Time passed second by second, but Yan Ziyuan was still sitting there calmly. Her face was getting paler and paler, and even her lips were drained of blood. She looked down at Yi Feng who was lying next to her and her body began to tremble. Her hand trembled as she touched Yi Feng's face. It was cold to the touch, as if her heart had sunk to the bottom of the sea. The coldness seemed to have scalded her fingertips, and she quickly moved away. Then she gently touched his eyebrows, his slightly closed eyes and his high nose. Her voice trembled strangely as if she was crying and laughing at the same time. You're really dead? You're really dead? Her fingers trembled violently, but she stubbornly tried to feel his breath. Her face was getting paler and paler and her eyes were getting bigger and bigger. She suddenly picked him up and hugged him tightly in her arms. She shook Yi Feng's body vigorously and gripped his arm tightly. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. How can you die? Wake up for me. If you die, I'll immediately marry someone else. I'll be with someone else for the rest of my life. I'll never look at you again. I'll never look at you again. I'll never remember you again. Yi Feng, do you hear me? Wake up. Wake up. I won't allow you to sleep again. I won't allow it. Do you hear me? Of course Yi Feng didn't wake up and didn't move. No matter how much she threatened or cried, he would never wake up again. After he finished speaking, he abandoned Yi Feng and walked towards Ning Xuema. Xuema, let's go. Let him continue pretending to be asleep. I don't want to talk to him anymore. Ning Xuema was pulled a few steps forward by her. Just as she was about to say something, she saw Yan Ziyuan's eyes were empty, her face was pale, and her footsteps were getting slower and slower. Finally Yan Ziyuan staggered and stopped. She slowly turned around and her gaze fell on Yi Feng. Ning Xuema's eyes fell on Yan Ziyuan's calf. Ziyuan, your leg is injured. Yan Ziyuan stared blankly at Ning Xuema, then looked down at her calf. Her calf was mottled with blood, and she hadn't had time to bandage it. She suddenly staggered back and sat beside Yi Feng. Yi Feng, my leg is injured. It hurts. It really hurts. Get up and bandage it for me. She looked at him attentively, waiting for him to be like how he was in the past. Every time she was injured he would be so heartbroken. He would count her carelessness and bandage her carefully. In the past, every time he was angry with her and ignored her, she would suffer a small injury and then run to his side to show him her grievance. He would sigh and bandage it for her. Now that her leg was injured to this extent, and the blood almost dyed her pants red, he wouldn't look at her or comfort her anymore. There was no one else in this world who cared about her as much as he did. He would never open his eyes to look at her again. Yan Ziyuan waited for a long time, but he didn't respond. She didn't give up and held his hand, pulling his hand to her leg. Brother Yi Feng, I'm really injured. Feel it? Chapter 1079. It was this pair of hands that had hugged her in the most dangerous time. One of his hands had covered her eyes, telling her not to be afraid. Now, his hands were passively placed on her thighs, and he would not bend his hands to protect her anymore. She was overwhelmed by a huge pain. She suddenly hugged him again as if she had a blood feud with him. She hugged him so hard that her fingertips turned white. I know you must be taking revenge on me, right? You hate me for leaving with another man, so you used your death to take revenge on me, right? Yan Ziyuan was extremely abnormal at this moment. Her cheeks were red and her body was shivering because of the cold. She bit her red lips so hard that they were bleeding, but her eyes were shockingly bright. You were wrong first. You didn't tell me that you were not my biological brother. You made me feel abnormal. I tried my best to shift my feelings away from you, so I let myself fall in love with that man. I tried my best to hypnotize myself to fall in love with that man. Ning Xuema was stunned. She seemed to be talking about the matter between Yi Feng and Yi Yu. Yan Ziyuan continued as if she was crazy. I went ashore with him, but I missed you so much that I was scared. I didn't marry that man because I couldn't let you go. I tried my best to escape back to the sea. I wanted to return to your side even if I had to be your sister forever. I accidentally found out the truth that you were not my brother. I was so happy, angry and happy at the same time. I swam in the sea like a mad woman. She choked for a moment. I tried my best to come back. I swam for 3 days and 3 nights without sleep. But you got engaged with another woman. You wanted to marry another woman. You wanted to marry another woman in front of me? I was so angry. I said I wanted to be a human. I asked you to help me beg the sorcerer of the mermaid tribe. You know I'm afraid of pain the most. I thought you wouldn't bear to let me do the operation. But you agreed in the end. Yifeng, do you know how scared I was at that time? How desperate I was. I think you really don't want me anymore. Yan Ziyuan was like an abandoned child. Her voice began to tremble. During the operation I was in so much pain. I screamed in pain. I wanted you to come in and see me. But you didn't come. Yifeng, you actually didn't come. I bled so much, I was in so much pain, I cried so much. But you still didn't come. At that time I was really desperate. I wanted to die. Instead of watching you marry someone else, I'd rather die in that operation. Yifeng, it's all your fault. It's all your fault. I just want to take revenge on you. I want you to watch me marry someone else in this lifetime and become someone else's wife. I will ignore you for the rest of my life. This is your retribution. Retribution. Did you hear that? At that time, I swore that I would never fall in love with you again, that I would never be your sister again. Her voice was intermittent, with one sentence after another. The more Ning Xuema listened, the more alarmed she became. Yan Ziyuan had really recovered Yi Yu's memories. How could this be? Didn't the twin life curse only remove the curse that Gu Ziyan put on her? Why did it have the ability to recover her previous memories? She looked at Shen Jiuli with a questioning gaze. Shen Jiuli also frowned slightly and transmitted his voice to her. Sharkman's blood has some unexpected miraculous effects. Perhaps her recovery of her previous memories has something to do with the flower absorbing Yi Feng's blood. Chapter 1080. Ning Xuema felt as if there was a stone in her heart. She couldn't help but take a step forward. Ziyuan? Yan Ziyuan didn't respond at all. She was completely immersed in the memories of the past. She smiled bitterly. Yifeng, I swore to cut off all ties with you at that time. Since you could watch me die, why? Why did you come to me again? It wasn't easy for me to forget you. She laughed out loud, but her laughter was full of sorrow. Yifeng, you're so cruel. You didn't let me go even when you died. I can't be more cruel than you, I can't be more cruel than you. How could you do this to me? She laughed until her face was full of tears, wetting Yifeng's clothes. Blood mixed with tears fell together, like a demonic flower blooming. She cried like a child who had been wronged. Brother Yifeng, I'm Ayu. She threw herself on Yifeng and cried until her whole body trembled. Brother Yifeng, wake up. Ayu is back. Don't you want me anymore? Don't you want me again? At the end of her words, she suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, sprinkling it on the front of Yifeng's clothes. Ning Xuema was shocked. She couldn't let Yan Ziyuan go on like this. If she went on like this, she would go crazy. Ning Xuema walked forward and pulled her up without any explanation. Ziyuan, don't cry. Don't cry. She forcibly held her in her arms and sent her psychokinesis to calm her almost boiling blood. Yan Ziyuan wanted to throw herself back on Yifeng, but she wasn't as strong as Ning Xuema. She struggled a few times but couldn't break free from her grasp. Let go of me. Let go of me. I want him to wake up. I want him to talk to me. Yan Ziyuan struggled under Ning Xuema's hands like crazy and shouted crazily. Her eyes were red and filled with madness. Ning Xuema's heart sank. She steeled herself and raised her hand to slap her. Yan Ziyuan, wake up. Yifeng was dead. He was dead. Did you hear that? Even if you don't want to admit it, he's already dead. Wake up. This was a resounding slap. Yan Ziyuan shuddered as if she had been woken up from a nightmare. She stopped yelling and stared blankly at Ning Xuema for a moment before slowly turning her head to look at Yifeng on the ground. It was as if she had been drenched in ice and snow from head to toe. She slowly squatted down and hugged her knees with her arms. Her long hair draped over her shoulders as she curled up and trembled slightly. She muttered, Yes, he's dead. He doesn't want me anymore. Ning Xuema looked around. The cave had just collapsed and there were signs of it collapsing again. This place was not safe. She took a deep breath and pulled Yan Ziyuan again. Ziyuan, wake up. Let's bring Yifeng up, okay? That way he can rest in peace. Rest in peace. These words agitated Yan Ziyuan again. Her body suddenly stiffened and she slowly raised her head. Her gaze fell on Yifeng again and she said softly, "We sharkmen go to the sea to rest in peace." Yifeng loved the sea deeply. If it wasn't for looking for her, he might not have come to the land for the rest of his life. As a result, he died in a foreign land. Ning Xuema closed her eyes. "Okay, I know a path that leads to the sea. Let's go." She was about to step forward and carry Yifeng onto Kirin's back when Yan Ziyuan bent down before her. She struggled to carry Yifeng and moved him out step by step. She was petite and it was already difficult for her to carry Yifeng, let alone carry him. After a few steps, she fell heavily to the ground. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.